All right, so Lindsay, would you like to?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the March 5th Hanford Advisory Board Cleanup and Risk Mitigation Committee meeting. My name is Lindsay Summers, and I am the Deputy Designated Federal Officer for the Hanford site. I would like to identify a few reminders before we get started. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the requirements of the Federal Advisory Committee Act, and each member has a joint responsibility for assuring that the operating ground rules are observed and discussions are conducted in a respectful manner. I appreciate your attendance today, and I look forward to a robust meeting.
Tom, you want a few opening remarks and we'll go into introductions?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, you probably shouldn't be online. Welcome, everybody. We've got a lot on the plate for this afternoon. It'll be action-packed. I wanted to give a quick update on the True Waste IM team. We had a meeting last month, I think. Yeah, last month. And we're going to have one more next week if we can get a doodle poll sent around. We've got pretty much a good idea of where the actual advice is framing out. We just need to work on the background section a little bit. So hopefully in April, we'll have that like a quick CaRM webinar maybe to approve that advice for the May meeting for the full board. Also, you'll see that there's a wrap sheet in the packet with just a list of different things that have hit the administrative record since our last meeting. If you have any questions on that, or if you want to do an administrative record scavenger hunt, we can set that up. It's something, a good skill to have to be able to look through the administrative record. I'm out of things to say, but it's only been 2 minutes, so we're early.
Yes, and let's go around the room and do introductions, and then we'll read off who's online.
My name is Rob Davis. I represent the city of Basco.
Oh, go ahead, we'll come back to you.
Larry Grant, community at large.
Mia Burke, Hanford Challenge. Susan Coleman, public at large.
Jeff Schramm, EPA.
Dan Strom, Benton Franklin Health District.
Tom Cecilia, Oregon Department of Energy.
Lindsay Summers, DOE. For Caulfield at TNS.
Andy Weborg, DOE Regional Operation.
Roberto Amigo, EPA.
Tom Larson, Benton County. Mary Ann Wonke, HMIS.
Tom Hunter, Washington State Department of Health.
Megan Hurton, Fergus Health.
All right, and
Charles, go ahead. Charles will Presley, League of Women Voters. Lockport, public at large.
Judy Talbot, facilitation team.
Facilitation team.
And online, we have Anagrizo Alvarez, Alicia Boyd, Dan Solis, Matt Hendrickson, Joe Matthew, Matthew Campbell, Ryan Miller, and Rose Perry.
Ryan is on his way back. He should be joining it.
Okay, fantastic. With that, are we ready for the presentation? We'll start a few minutes early. Let me bring it up.
And Ryan, I don't know if you can unmute yourself, but are your folks on the line? Alicia was here. Yeah.
I see Alicia.
Okay, then we should be good.
And our first presentation is Basin.
So to kick it off, we got Andy Weborg from DOE to talk about the K-Basin status and progress. It's exciting. It's one of the last big things on the river corridor.
Thanks for having me. So I'm new here, obviously, Andy Weborg. I am a supervisor for all the D4 projects in Hanford. I'm responsible for 100K amongst other things. And with some retirements, I got tabbed and asked to present, so be gentle if you would, please.
Always.
So we're going to talk about. Wait for the
The white
slides.
So one thing to note when you're speaking, if you can talk towards the middle table, even though it's weird, that way the owl is going to pick you up.
Okay.
Okay, so people online can see this. We have hard copies in here. If you'll just tell me when to turn the page, we'll be able to follow online.
Will do.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
So here to give an update about 105K West deactivation process, talk some of about our soil remediation, and this is just an informational entry, so we're not looking for advice. Next slide, please. So we're two in. So I'm on slide 3 for those of you following
The
online.
photos,
The photos, yep.
yes. Mhm.
So just like to give a kind of a visual update. So the bottom right slide is the current status as of last month. As you can see, from even 2019 to 2024, we've made significant progress, not only in the reactor ISS, but also in the waste site remediation. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the waste sites, but I want to point note to the large hole just south of the Cadiz ISS. Just give you an idea, that's.
Where would that be? So,
So bottom right picture, about mid-third on the right-hand side.
okay,
So, yeah, right where the mouse is, right there.
okay, great, thank you.
Can I ask you to announce out the acronyms?
I can try to. Some of them I got so used to speaking in acronym that I'll have to think about it for a second. So
ISS.
interim safe storage.
Okay.
You might know it as cocoonment is the other way we've described it in the past. It's how we're putting the reactors into a safe configuration for the near future. As an idea, just to give you an idea of the volume of dirt we moved, as of January, we were at 7,500 school bus loads of dirt remediated from that waste site. That's volume of dirt, so I could get into the weight numbers, but it's better to put it in a picture that everyone understands. Next slide, please.
Director Ford, yeah, we got a little lag on.
Yep, that's fine. I'm gonna look back to make sure we're on the right slide before. So we're gonna talk about the 105K West reactor building and surrounding area first. Last fall, late last summer, early fall, we took down the sludge annex. We've also since then taken down the 115K West building, which was the gas recirculation building. If you're looking at the picture, it is right below the label reactor core, is where the 115K West building was. Just north of that, between the two labels, is the 117K West building. And I do not remember off the top of my head what that building was used for, but we are in the process of getting ready to take that out too here in the near future. So just kind of giving you an idea of the general footprint of where we sit. You've got the reactor core, you've got the K West Basin, which is what we're getting prepared to dewater here in about a month, and then all the dewatering equipment just to the west of that. So next slide, please. So from a basic basin demolition point of view, we're still in the dewatering phase. I believe everybody's seen this slide once before. I believe we try to present this slide most times. So basically we're dewatering, then we're gonna go to grouting, then we're gonna remove the above grade structures around the reactor core itself. That includes the high dose debris removal and then below grade as needed. Then we're gonna go take care of the basin, finally take care of the reactor, including putting it into our safe storage. We're still targeted for a few years out on that because this is obviously not a fast process. So that being said, we are on track right now to meet TPA milestones as they currently sit. Next slide, please. All right, so we are on to activities. This is a little bit more detail of what we went into, so I talked about it a couple of slides ago. Top left picture is the 115K West demolition. That is the gas recirculation building I just mentioned. We still have a little below grade sampling that we have left to do that we're working with the regulators on to determine the best course of action on, but we are final stages on that one. Bottom left is the 105K West Annex. That is also known as the sludge transfer annex. If you remember the sludge transfer project a few years ago, this is the building that was built for that they've now completely removed and taken care of. So it is flat ground, it is gone, and we are considering that complete. So.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So obviously that was a new build for a specific purpose. Were you able to reuse anything within that facility?
Unfortunately, the way it was designed, we intentionally did not plan on reusing anything because it was a potentially contaminated building. And so we chose to design it to make it as easy to demolish with the intention of not reusing anything.
It was beautiful.
It was, and it served its purpose perfectly. So, the other part of that, and this is a success I like to champion, was that the design actually made it extremely easy and effective to demolish, which is something that going forward, if we have to build, we're gonna plan on is essentially pushing designs that are easy to take out, because that makes remediation a whole lot easier in the back end. Keeps the workforce safe and keeps the environment easier to keep the environment safe. All right, the two right-hand pictures are the transfer cask assembly. So part of the process historically was moving fuel parts, pieces, and sludge, or mostly parts and pieces around So all the things that were in the K East Basin got moved to the K West Basin. These were the two, this is one of the two assemblies that we moved all the parts and pieces in. Unfortunately, we found last fall that this one had a bent locking pin on it. And so to get it open, we had to go through and actually drill all the pins out, which was high hazard work. Thankfully, we were actually able to get it all drilled out safely with no issues, but it took us extra time as a function of that. And then the bottom right picture is actually us vacuuming out the material in that. So we can safely say we are not orphaning this waste, which was our purpose, or our intent was to find a proper home for this waste when all was said and done versus having to leave it for some future determination. Any questions on this one before I move on?
I think we have some questions that are circulating, but
Okay.
we typically we'll have you present and then the regulators and then we take them.
Okay, fair enough. I'm used to getting questions as I go, so that's why I asked. All right, we're gonna move on to the next slide then, which should be another set of 4 pictures. So this is talking more about what is going to be happening, we're prepping for right now, what will be happening starting in the next month or so. So we're gonna be dewatering the basin, and then once we're finished dewatering, we're grouting it. One of the lessons we learned from K East, if you remember, was we grouted as we dewatered. That caused some water chemistry issues for our treatment purposes. So we're gonna dewater the whole way and then grout after. The intention is to basically leave a footer of water in there. It's about 11 inches of water in the bottom, and then grout and fill it back up with the grout essentially soaking up the water as we go. The final end state in the interim end state is to have the basin grouted, completely stabilized so that we can then do demolishing at a future plan date. So top left picture, part of our process for dewatering is we go through a bunch of management assessments. That's both contractor led and DOE led to make sure that we are essentially doing everything safe, right? But not only safe, but compliant, and basically we're meeting every need we need to meet. So this is the latest one you saw. It passed with a couple of post-start issues, but they're nothing that's considered groundbreaking or earth shattering. So they're internal admin sort of things. Bottom left is installation of the dewatering equipment. So once we start dewatering, I can't allow people into the basin. So as a function of that, we've got to make sure everything is set up and ready to go once we start dewatering. The right picture.
There you go.
Yep, thanks, Josh. Top right picture is the vertical pipe casing. So the material that we could pull out of the bottom of the basin, the parts and pieces that we could, ended up in one of these that will then be grouted for future remediation. If you're familiar with 61810 and the vertical pipe casing remediation that happened, this is the same basic concept. It's essentially we're putting a material into a casing, grouting it, and then we're going to go grind it up and pull it out and dispose of it accordingly. This allows us to control contamination and control dose at the same time. The bottom right picture you see is all our grouting ports. This is grouting that will cover the whole, basically, not only the basin, but all the little parts and pieces associated with the basin. So it's not just as simple as putting one hose in and letting it fill up. We've got to make sure all the gaps and spaces are filled, which is why you see the, 21 grouting insertions there. Each VPC, as an example, has a grouting insertion specifically for it, plus all the filters and all the other things that go along with it. So, next slide, please. So this one is out of order from what I intended, but that's because I didn't make the change, so I'll take the hit for that one. So this is the K West K area facility demolition, the K West annex, which is the sludge transfer annex. You can see in the top center there. That's the flat ground. As you can see, it is completely gone, and then the 115 K West gas recirculation building in the bottom right. All right, next. So we're going to move over to soil remediation now. Everything you see on this slide has been completed for waste. So the only waste site that I did not plan on completing that we actually completed as part of it is that 100K104, because the 130K2, which is the big dig, as I'm affectionately calling it, basically overcame the site, and so we figured we might as well attack it and take it what we could. So 130K2, for those of you who don't remember, was a fuel oil bunker. It was a single shell tank fuel oil bunker. We knew we had leaks into the ground. What we did not know is how extensive the leak was, and so we've essentially been chasing oil for 6 months now. Yeah. It's getting a little frustrating, to be honest with you. One of the challenges I'll tell you we have is I've hit the extent of my northeast corner with the reactor building. So we're trying to figure out how to sample underneath to see how far the oil goes underneath the building on that one. Hopefully by the next time I come back to the hab, we'll have a good answer for what that process is. But I can't obviously dig underneath the reactor, so I'm at a stuck point when it comes to what I'm gonna do there. We are also currently at the extent east we can go to that power distribution center you see there. We are in the process of taking that offline. I say we, Hanford is. And once that comes offline, then we'll keep moving east, but that's not in the near future. That's in the next, 5 years, I think, future, so. All right, next slide, please. One more close-up of the. David?
We're here.
Yep. Got one more, it should be.
Oh, sorry, here.
Yeah. So to give everybody kind of an idea of how big this is, I wanted to present a pure top-down view. 7,500 school buses, that's the full-length school bus. Right now, it's sitting about 50 feet deep. To give you an idea, we are still digging south and west at this point. We will chase it as far as we need to and as long as we need to, but it's turning into a big dig is no other way to put it. And thankfully it's good filter for her, so it's double good for us in the grand scheme of things. I get a waste site and I get to put 30 year herders, so final slide is my key takeaways. So we are continuing to make significant progress, and I'm pretty happy with that at the moment. We do have every intention and every plan to complete dewatering and grouting by September 24, which puts us where we need to be to meet the long-term milestone. And then obviously we're continuing waste site remediation and demolition.
Thank you. So this is a ecology lead, is that? No, it's EPA, sorry. I get pay and stuff. All right. Roberto, regulator protected?
Yeah, so regarding the work that's been going on for 100K, I want to give kudos to the field team that's been doing their work there. As Andy had mentioned, there have been a few technical setbacks with some case that were difficult to open. They put out I think the colloquial term was like a tiger team to get that resolved. Glad it got resolved and in a safe manner as well, especially in a safe manner. And regarding the work that's going on for soil remediation, we're still working closely with DOE and contractors to see the extent of 13082, and we're gonna keep a full check on it to see what the next steps are going to be. Right now, it's really to tell what the extent is for that northeast section regarding the petroleum. But as soon as we know, we'll give you all an update, and we're ready to act accordingly for that.
College, anything to add, Ryan?
Yeah, just like Roberta said, this is an EPA-led unit, so we largely just support EPA's lead on this area. So thanks, Roberta.
Okay. I think we have a queue. Pam's in after me. So I had a couple. Really appreciate the talk, and it's great to see the progress being made. You mentioned that the high dose debris disposal was not going to be leaving orphan waste. Do you know what the disposition is? Is that where I heard it?
Where possible to learn that they're we're still trying to work through all the pieces and parts. The big key though was to get it out of that cask because it was locked in the cask until that point. We didn't know. We weren't 100% sure what was in there. We had a pretty good idea, but we were working through the waste process on that right now.
But it's at least been characterized now.
Yep.
Excellent. And then the oil that's in the subsurface underneath the reactor and sort of the power station, that's relatively shallow. It's not all the way to water, right?
We're about 50 feet off groundwater still, so
And what type of oil is that?
it's fuel oil. It's for the generators that help support the reactor operation.
That's not something you could do like bioventing to get to if it's underneath the.
We are looking at that as an option right now. We were hoping it would not keep crawling north like it did, and so we were hoping we could dig it out first. We're now going back to look at other options.
And you said the milestones are being met right now?
All right, Tim. Is there going to be a cocoon over this reactor as you did with the other one?
Yes.
What's the timeframe on that?
I know what the final milestone end date is. I'm not sure the exact timeframe on the ISS, but 2034 is when we intend to have everything wrapped up by. I believe that's correct. Is it 33? Might be 33. Okay. Sorry, I've got too many numbers in my head. 2030, early 2030s is what our target is to be completely done.
And is it just over the reactor building, is that it?
It'll look exactly the same as Case looks. So we're gonna take down all the ancillary structures, everything around it, clean up as much of the reactor core and the parts and pieces as we can, and then basically leave what we can't in Cocoon until we can get back to it at a later date.
And groundwater pump and treat will continue?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a few questions. Thank you so much for your presentation. The first is, when you're dewatering, where does that water go?
So the water runs through a series of filters to remove as much of the contamination as we can. We then end up sending it to the effluent treatment facility, which will take care of the water. But they have a specific receipt criteria that we have to meet, which is why we're gonna be filters and IXMs and other fun things like that.
What's an item?
Ion exchange module. Thank you, sorry. As I said, I live in acronym world, I'm used to speaking acronyms.
And then another question is for the soil remediation below the basin, what does that look like, or will you not know until you do the demo?
So are we talking the K West Basin, the
Yes.
one in dewatering? Okay.
Yeah.
So basically it will look similar to what we've done in the past. So we will we will grout, which essentially fills the whole basin in and stabilizes everything. And then we'll come back through and chunk pieces out and basically dig the whole thing out, including below the basin. Obviously, if there's anything we find at that point, we will then go and attack it accordingly. So we don't, based on historical documents, we don't expect to find much underneath the basin itself though.
So for that preliminary dig, how deep do you go?
I think we're targeting 5 feet below the bottom of the basin right now.
Okay.
I say that because that's the initial target, but it's dependent on, obviously what we find.
Yes.
And while I've got the equipment in there, it would be a good time to attack it, so.
And then, my other question is about the cocoon.
Mhm.
So I know for K East, it was really dangerous. It turned out for workers to be putting one of the like diagonal part. And so it sounded like there were lessons learned from that. I'm just curious if you're gonna be changing the design for K West.
The general design will not change. The approach of how we build it probably will, but we're in an initial design phases on how and we've got that working on a subcontract that out right now.
Would it be, because my understanding was it was like an all one piece? Would it be like in separate pieces?
So one of the options they're looking at is that, so it wasn't all one piece, but they were large panels.
Okay.
And when you get up to that elevation and the winds obviously we get around here, there were some challenges related to that. So they're looking at options, but that is one of the challenges we put forth the designers is how do I get around, how do I minimize this safety risk? Because obviously that's not something we want to have to deal with in the future.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Do not have anyone online or chat. Rob?
I was gonna ask you to clarify the milestone numbers that we're trying to reach.
I'd have to go get back to you specifically on that one unless Roberto's got it.
What was the question again?
The milestones? So in the K East, we have a milestone. Excuse me, K West, we have a milestone. What is that milestone number?
Regarding the interim safe storage?
Yes.
Yeah, so it is N093-27 is complete, 105 K East and 105 K West reactor interim safe storage in accordance with the removal action work plan.
Okay.
That's the full name. And the due date is 9/29/2032. which I wanted to correct, give a correction and answer Pat's question earlier.
What were the contaminants found in the basin?
As far as K West, basically, I mean, it's a series of all radionuclides. So, I mean, you name it, in some way, shape, or form, it was in there, I don't have
Plus
this.
lead and chromium and mercury.
I don't know specifically if those were, but I
Okay,
I have to.
at least the nucleotides.
Yeah, I mean, it was the waste basin, or the basin for production reactor, right?
Yeah,
So,
okay.
I don't believe there was much in the chromium and lead category, but I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I'm coming in at the end of the story. I was at K Basins in 2002. And, you know, soil, water, and sludge, spent fuel. Could you just help bring me up to date? So K East has been completely cleared out. Fuel got moved to K West. Where's the fuel now?
So most of the fuel so all the sludge has been taken out in casks and it lives in T plant. So we work through the sludge treatment process. All the fines and particles and parts where we can hold them out are going into one of those vertical pipe casings for disposal. If we go back to, if you can get the slide back up.
Yeah, give me just 1 second.
If you go back to slide 7 on the hard copy. So what we can get from that we can pick is that and then we'll be grouted and disposed of. All the rest of the fines that we can't get out will be part of encapsulated with the grout that we put into the basin and we then dig out at a later date. So in the next, couple of years, I believe it is the plan right now.
Okay, and where's the fuel that has been stored?
Fuel has long gone. Fuel is either shipped off to wherever we shipped it off to, or it's sitting in one of the storage areas, the. Thank you. That was before my time out there, unfortunately, in 2002, I was in Utah doing chemical weapons stuff.
I think most of the fuel's in the canister storage.
Yeah, here.
Or T plant with this one.
Or been reprocessed.
Reprocessed.
Yeah, that's what the objective of the K East and K West plants were, was to send them over to reprocessing facility to extract the plutonium.
The fuel, though, that was in the K basins, long-term, was actually from end plant.
Yeah.
Well, after everything was shut down, so most of that didn't get reprocessed, and that's in container storage.
And it has various stages of burnup and corrosion.
Yes.
And
that's
the sludge on the bottom is failed fuel rods that have leaked out, fission products and
Along with a lot of the fines and parts and pieces are from those rusting and things like that, so.
dust storms.
And it's getting to the drained water is getting to this treatment plant trucks or pipes.
So I have 3 filters and then an ion exchange that goes through, so I have two 5-micron filters, an ion exchange, which then pulls out the alpha and beta associated strontium and the alpha particles, and then a 1-micron finishing filter to kind of catch all the dust stuff that you mentioned. From there, it then goes over to trucks that get shipped to ETF.
How many truckloads do you think? Sorry, which one's not?
We're guesstimating somewhere between 300 to 500. I know they've got a better number than that, I can't give you a tighter range for that, unfortunately. But 3 to 5 trucks a day is the plan.
So, you use the expression chunk out, basically. So, I guess a couple comments. Would we say you're gonna leave a foot of water in and then slowly fill up the grout, letting the grout, I know, dirty way, you're diluting the grout essentially. Now, when you say chunk out, once it's solidified, we also heard that that's what they're gonna do to the tunnels and do other things. Well, when you talk about chunking out, could you describe that process and how you would size of the chunks and things like that?
Yeah, so chunking was my way to describe taking pieces out, but I don't mean actual pieces, I mean scoops and digs. So the grout we're gonna use for the basin is what they call commercial density fill, or CDF. It's basically a not as dense fill as a standard construction concrete. It's designed to stabilize but also be dug out very easily. So My goal would be to be able to go in with any heavy equipment that we've done for any of the other digs and just be able to dig it out as we go. When I say chunk out though, I mean like we'd be taking maybe the top 5 feet and then, reassessing, taking the next 5 feet and reassessing. We still haven't got that plan to figure out what that looks like, but what we want to do is we're making sure we wait until we get an idea of what the basin looks like post grouting to make sure we're putting the plan together for it.
Other questions? Any questions online?
There's one in the back.
Thank you, Bob.
When you did the KD's dewatering, well, I'd rather KD's use the basin water for, grouting, shielding rather, when you were taking it out and don't call it emptying down to 11 inches, is that correct?
That is correct. So they basically dewatered and grouted almost simultaneously.
Right.
And that caused some serious water chemistry issues for receipt and ETF, which is why we changed up for this one. So we worked closely with the waste receipt folks and the water treatment folks to make sure that what we were doing could meet their needs, but also we wouldn't put people at risk. So if you remember, I said we weren't gonna let people into the basin once we started dewatering. That's the dose concern primarily that we're worried about.
So the resins that you're using for the dewater, containing the dewater,
Yep.
those resins will now be contaminated. And are you considering them orphan?
No, they get grounded, inside the, basically the big module itself
Right.
and shipped off to Earth as just waste of that.
So you're talking yourselves up. Almost.
No, I was gonna say is that we noticed in this system plan that's coming out, or essentially the system plan, talks about using the CST, the crystalline silicon titanate, to extract the cesium, strontium, and other radionuclides from the LAW waste, or liquids. And we know that we're gonna be able to send those CST resins over, well, it's not a resin, the minerals, over to HLW facility and put them in glass. And that's what's stated in the system plan. So would there be any advantage for you using the CSTs as resin and being able to dispose of it in high level waste? Because, there are few particles, there are transuranics, there are, all those kind of things in there, so.
So the short answer is there's always a potential for it. The reality is in order to meet the milestone, I need to keep down this current path.
Okay.
That's what the filtration, the 2 5 micron and the 1 microns are really gonna do is kind of pull all that particulate out you described. The ion exchange is quite literally just gonna remove the radionuclides that are not captured by the filters. So.
And you're using organic, right, resource now? Yeah.
The other thing to think about is because this hasn't been reprocessed, it's not high level waste, it's high activity waste.
Yep.
So it can go to Earth.
Thank you.
See, we're not. Thank you so much for the presentation and welcome. And one more.
K-West was completely okay at the pump installation with KD's do it. Is the water clear now?
It is clear, we are clearing it down and we've been doing a mass recirculation campaign, running through filters to try and clear it down as much as we can. So so when I talk dewatering, I talk to 5 microns. We have a whole separate recirculation train that is a couple of 20 micron filters and 5 microns to try and get the bulk particulate out before I can try to dewater the basin. So. But yes, it was extremely opaque, and actually we've noticed as the temperature changes, the water chemistry will fluctuate a little bit and cause opaqueness to re-show back up in some cases, so.
There's one picture of the water was really clear, I think that's not basic water, is that?
The bottom right page 6, so that was actually out of the transfer cask assembly, that was basically looking down into the metal canister you see in the upper right picture. The metal canister container you see in the upper right picture.
So if, I know you're new to your gig, but if you had a crystal ball, when will be a good time to come back and talk to us again?
What are we, early March, I'd probably say right around the fiscal year, changeover, so late September.
So October committee meeting, you in?
Yeah.
Perfect. So don't be ashamed. Thank you so much.
I grew up in the community, I actually went to Hamburg High School, I left and decided to come back and help clean this up, so I will not be a stranger. My parents live in Grand Rapids and I live in West Richland, and that's why I came back.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we are running 25 minutes ahead of schedule. I see Nancy here. Hi, Nancy. Do we want to keep running ahead of schedule? Or do we want to?
Why don't we, what do you want to do?
I'm fine running ahead of schedule.
You want to come to the table or stand?
Does someone have an extra copy or so?
Here, you can have mine.
We just need a moment to get copies distributed.
Yeah. Stay where you all can see what after Josh doesn't bite.
So sticking with the river corridor, we've got Jason Capron who's going to talk about just sort of high level 100K and 100N. While we're getting the slides up there and they're coming around, welcome. And it looks like we're up.
Good. Everyone, let everybody get copies. So thanks for the introduction, Tom. For those of you who haven't met me, it's been a while since I've been here, all 9 months. So I'm Jason Capron. I work with Healy's Soil and Groundwater Group, the sister group to Andy's group. So group. I'm a technical advisor for that group. So really a lot of my role is working with the development of the record of decision across the Andy site. So what I really want to do is, I think it was last June I came before this group, kind of let you know where we were at NNK, and I'll kind of tell you my punchline right now. At the time, I thought we would be doing a proposed plan for the NNK rods, about right now. So I really thought I'd be coming back to you guys to talk a little bit more about what that was going to look like. We're running a little bit further behind on that, and this is some things we wanted to bring in. I'll tell you the punchline right now, is it's going to be, we're looking at the second half of this fiscal year, of this calendar year, for getting those out to public review. So I'll step through it a little bit, let you know kind of what's coming. I really expect to come here at the end when it's closer to actually going out and give you the more detailed overview of what's in those proposed plans. So, like I say, just really want to get you primed a little bit for that coming. Really just informational only at this stage, but I will come back again and be happy to step through more of the specific details of those proposed plans when they're closer to the public issuance. So go ahead, I basically covered who's running the slides. Or
I am.
running them? Are you actually? Okay, cool. That's your awesome. Go ahead and go to my intro slide. I was just covering the purpose there. So a little bit of a recap. The river corridor area of Hanford there, along kind of out there outside of the Great Wall that you see on your figure. The river corridor remediation, remember, began in the 1990s under interim action records of decision. And lots of the different areas, 100 BC, 100N, 100K, et cetera, were worked in fairly similar timelines, a little bit of back and forth between it, but that all started in the 90s. In about 2008, we started doing the planning to go from interim rods to so-called final rods. I'm going to say final rod to distinguish that it's not an interim rod. So we started transitioning, or we started the planning for that transition to final rods in 2008. About 2010, we started doing some of the sampling and things like that and started gradually moving the areas into their final rods. The first one was 300 area in 2013, 100 FIU came in 2014, 100 DH in 2018, and then 100 BC in 2021, leaving us with just the K and the N area, the last of the two on there, to transition in. Right now, those are still running neck and neck with each other. That wasn't necessarily our plan. It's just been the way that the events have unfolded. So that's currently where they're sitting. One thing for those of you who have worked closely with the interim rods, you probably know that there would be one rod that would cover multiple areas because it's covering specific types of waste sites like burial grounds and whatnot. The approach with the final rods is based on areas, as I just mentioned. It focuses on this as the rod for BC, but in so doing, it addresses all of BC, or will address all of Canada. That means soil and groundwater. So the record of decision will be comprehensive for soil contamination and groundwater contamination within an area, which is a little bit of a change from how the NRMs were structured. Go ahead to the next one if you would for me, Ryan. So as I mentioned, our remedial investigation feasibility study efforts, the planning began back in 2008. We did some additional field characterization. Really what we've been working on within NK this time is developing the actual remedial investigation feasibility study reports. These are comprehensive reports that present all the evaluation that's been done, both from a science standpoint as well as then looking at the engineering solutions for that contamination. We've been, in case of in-area, we've been working with Alicia, who I don't see here, and some of Jeff, and then in K-area, we've been working with Laura and then with Roberto, getting through the regulatory agency comments on those reports. These RAFS reports are very large, very comprehensive reports, definitely taken, these are years of efforts to get through. The stage we're at right now is that we've resolved all of EPA's comments, we've resolved ecology's comments, so we're wrapping up the actual RAFS reports, and we're developing the proposed plans. The function of the proposed plan is really to supplement the RAFS in communicating that information to the public. The RAFS is available to the public, but they're a very large document. If you're so inclined to it, you're welcome to, but the proposed plan is really there to be a much easier read while still containing a lot of detail that presents the approach that we're looking at for remediation for the NK area. So that's the step we're at right now, is developing those draft documents. We'll be sending drafts over to EPA and ecology for review first. We work through EPA and ecology's review so that we make sure we're going out with common agency position on it. And that's what will then lead to the public review. Like I said, timeline wise, there's still some steps there where we've got to make sure we work through things. So that kind of makes it look like we're looking at the second half of this year for me. Once we do get through the proposed plan, as I mentioned, the sole function of that proposed plan is to provide the public an opportunity to provide comments on where we're at in the process. We then use that to develop the records of decision, working in tandem with EPA and with ecology. And then that record of decision is what actually documents that decision, and we move forward with implementation from there. Go ahead to the next one, or you're already there, right? Thank you. So that proposed plan, the content of it is going to really a summary of the remedial investigation feasibility study. I encourage anyone, if you're that interested, please go and read the detailed documents, but start with the proposed plan because you'll get a much better orientation first. And again, I'll come here, be happy to present and kind of walk you guys through it at a high level if you're interested. But it's going to summarize what's going on at the site, what our understanding of the contaminants are at the site, the behavior of those contaminants, just as a big picture of everything that's going on in an area, everything that's going on in K area. These will be two separate proposed plans. It also presents in there, so when we look at it, all that contamination, we say, well, what are the solutions to address that contamination? We look at different technologies that could address the contamination in soil and groundwater. We combine those technologies into comprehensive alternatives. And those alternatives look at everything in collective of what we need to do to address these waste sites and these waste sites and this groundwater contaminant and this, and we package them up into each alternatives. Each proposed plan is going to have roughly 4 alternatives. There's a little bit of difference between K and N. That are just different options that could be taken that we looked at and evaluated that we thought were the best potential alternatives to look at it. The proposed plan then does a very detailed evaluation. The RFS does even more detailed one, saying, hey, here's how we evaluate these. And the way we evaluate them is using CERCLA criteria. CERCLA, from a national standpoint, says there are 9 criteria thou shalt use in order to evaluate remedial alternatives. And we just use those, we step through it, really doing a comparison between the alternatives. Hey, this alternative does better in this regard, this one does better in that regard. And we present what we call a detailed and comparative analysis of those alternatives. At the end of the day, based on that detailed and comparative analysis, the proposed plan will present a preferred remedy that DOE and EPA agreed on, or DOE and ecology in the case of that area. Say this is what we believe is the best alternative to address this situation at the site. That will be contained in the proposed plan. All of that is then what we use to solicit public feedback on it, which can absolutely still influence it. One of the biggest questions I always get is like, well, at that point, the DOE already decided, the answer is overwhelmingly no. Public input on the proposed plan is still a very important part of the process. That's actually one of those CERCLA criteria, specifically getting that community input and looking at how it could influence things. So that's the purpose of it. Because that public step's important, like I say, that these absolutely do go out for public comment. That is their function. It's By default under regulation, there's a 30-day comment period. That can be extended. That's something we work with EPA on. I think those of you who've been going for a while know that we typically go out to 60-day ones on hand for those cases and 90-day ones. That's something we'll talk about in the context of the timing of the time that I'll work with Roberto on. Again, my crystal ball right now, because of where I feel like we're at the draft process, I'm thinking second half. I'm hoping it's more towards the end of summer, but I think it'll be summer, second half of this year. Last time when I talked with you guys, I said, well, the challenge I'm wrestling with is I have both N and K running parallel. No one's that excited to come in and two proposed plans at once. We're certainly not trying to release them in parallel. I heard input from a lot of people like, please don't do that to us. We'll look at it with the timing dynamics as we get it. Right now, I'm honestly just trying to keep both of them moving forward in a positive way. I can't even tell you which one will come first. I have my own bets, but it's really just going to be which one gets through the process, and then we'll sequence that and roll it out from there. So from there, go ahead on to the next one, Ryan. So the other thing I get asked about a lot is like, what's that transition? So I mean, K area, obviously, Andy was just talking about the K basins. I don't know if you guys are hearing about waste sites or anything the other day. There's ongoing work in K area. We have a pump and treat system. K's definitely got things going on. And well, to a lesser degree, definitely still has work going on. How do we handle that transition from interim to a final status? Again, the new logs will address both soil and groundwater. So in so doing, they're replacing multiple interim rods. This is something that we've basically practiced across 4 rods now. As I mentioned, we already did this for several of the other areas. That those mechanisms for the transition are addressed as part of the final rod process. And just boil down to the punchline, usually says, keep doing the interim work until you have the work plan in place for the final work. I don't want to be pre-decisional to, hey, this is going to be the remedy, but our general expectation, I think, from both the DOE, EPA, and ecology standpoint is that we'll probably keep going like things like waste site remediation at K area. The expectation is that we'll just keep doing waste site remediation. There's some little changes in the cleanup levels and things like that, but that it will largely continue. Again, we need to step through the decisional parts of that, ensure that there's the opportunity if there needs to be modifications, but otherwise the intent is able to just keep rolling. We do a fairly seamless transition. This has worked very well for the other 4 areas. Just to give some, I'm gonna give some teaser now for the parts that I'll probably give more detail in, and then we get into when I come back and actually presenting on the contents of the proposed plan. But just so you get a sense of the kind of things you're going to see here and put in when they come forward. All of these up front, the first alternative you're always going to see in both of these proposed plans is a no action alternative. That's required by regulation that we consider a baseline. What if you do nothing further? So that will always be the first alternative you see. From there, as I alluded to earlier, you're going to see alternatives that are combinations of different technologies that seek to address the total problem. I just chose some examples. There's a lot of things in these. If you look across the different alternatives, but I chose some of the more visible examples to show you. Good old fashioned, excavate, treat as required, dispose typically at our on-site landfill area. So the same type of processes we've been using. That's still a component, as I mentioned, especially for K area where there's ongoing site remediation that still needs to occur. Next one to the right there, pump and treat. Both of these still look at options where we would use pump and treat technology to continue to remove contaminants from groundwater, treat it before re-injecting into the groundwater. Next one you see down in the lower left, soil flushing, particularly for K area. I know Elwood and the times myself have presented here talking about using soil flushing to help flush contaminants from the soil so that a pump and treat system can capture them. That's still a component we're looking at as part of the remedies for 100K area in particular. And the one there on the right, you may not have heard from as much on, is bioventing. It's a little more important at 100N area. 100N has total petroleum hydrocarbon contamination in the soil. And using bioventing is a good way. What bioventing does is you're literally pumping down air at a little more aggressive rate to kind of stimulate the microbial action to get them to help break down those petroleum hydrocarbons down there. So that's been a component of the interim action. It's something we're continuing to look at as a component of the final action. Again, that's just an example selection. That's not comprehensive to everything we're looking at, but those are some of the bigger pieces that you'll see in the remedies when they come across. My next one, if you would, Ryan, the other piece I want everyone to be aware of is, so in area there is a permeable reactive barrier. And what a permeable reactive barrier is in this context is it's a series of injections. There's a photo there on the lower right where you can see holes in rapid series where chemical amendments are injected down, and the intent is to create a crystal structure that literally traps strontium as it flows through. It doesn't destroy the strontium, it sequesters it there and keeps it from reaching the river. It takes a large part of it out. That's been a component of the interim remedy, and it has been preserved thus far in the 100N final action planning. So if you were to pick up the RIFS today, you would see in all the alternatives, you would see a PRB component, this permeable reactive barrier. It's something we've been looking at more recently as we get additional data on the area. A lot of the need to include that permeable reactive barrier was based on presumptive risk of what was happening. And it presents some challenges with putting in a PRB. It introduces its own intricacies and challenges to what we have to do. So we're currently under an evaluation of whether or not the PRB is really needed. I don't want to be presumptive because I don't know the outcome of that yet. It's something we're looking at. It really should be an alternative component rather than trying to rejigger the RIFS because it stands very well. We're doing this as what we call an RIFS addendum. So it will be a supplemental component to the RIFS that will present that evaluation and will be available to the public. Honestly, if that addendum says, in doing this evaluation, it's like, never mind, what you have is fine, then you'll never see the addendum. But presuming that the addendum says, yes, there's a piece here that we should look at removing this or modifying this remedy, that will then become part of the remedies that are proposed out in the proposed plan. I make that point because I want to be really clear. I know some people are like, oh, you're looking at this addendum. It absolutely will be part of anything that's put out for the public for proposal to look at. So you can see the comprehensive picture, the detailed evaluations from the document will be available in the supported reference material. So that's the kind of rapid fire punchline that's going on where we're at. Again, right now what we're really at is we're preparing the draft documentation for the proposed plan. Those will be going to our regulatory agencies very soon, working through the regulatory comment resolution process. And then we'll work with both the regulatory agencies and with you guys on what the issuance timing is. Best guess, second half of this year. I might, for coming back here, when's our next one, Tom?
The August full board, right? Or September full board? August, maybe?
Yes, September committee, or no, September's full board, August committee meetings, and October committee meetings.
August and October, those are your choices.
So August, I mean, my working target will be that, like, ideally what would be in my plans that I come back to you guys in August, because I think that may line up very well. If for some reason it's looking later, I talk to you, see if there's a better window, but that's what it looks like to me right now. I'd be happy to come and give you the much more detailed version once there's a little bit more content there to actually present on. But I'm absolutely happy to answer any questions right now, of course, on anything you got on it.
Excellent. So we started with EPA last time. Ryan, does the college have there?
Yeah, Kim, I know you just dropped in, but did you have any thoughts you wanted to share on 100K, 100N?
Well, we're in full, my name's Kim Welch. I'm the project manager for the river corridor and Central Plateau. And we've been planning with DOE with having this proposed plan come out later this either summer or early fall. And there are some changes as Jason has alluded to. We're aware of most of those changes. We're in the middle of discussing with DOE on that, but we haven't officially started the proposed plan discussions with them to date. They're pretty getting close to providing us with that information and for us to evaluate the progress on 110. That's my part of this with 100K being EPA rate.
Excellent. Roberto, you want?
Yeah, well, I want to first ask Jeff.
You're talking, go ahead, I'll talk about it.
Regarding 110, if you're thinking that you wanted to chime in.
Well, I just want to say that, as Jason said, these are the last two operable units along the river corridor that do not have rods. So we're really excited that we're getting to a point now where we'll have rods along the entire river corridor. There's a lot of work that, and I'll speak to Ed, it's an ecology lead, that for many years, they've done a lot of good work in putting this together. We've got the draft RIFS, and we're leading to a proposed plan very soon. And so, as Kim said, we haven't seen the data, Jason alluded this to, we haven't seen the data yet. So as scientists, we're not getting out in front of the data until we look at it, but we're excited to see it and evaluate and move forward. I think Jason said everything else.
All right. I really appreciate the presentation of these. Back to Roberto.
Yeah, so for 100K, Yeah, we're still, reading through the RFS, as of yesterday, we EPA, extended the review for the FS, now, the new due date would be, April 19th of 2024. And for the remedial investigation, the RI, that is due later this month. I don't remember the date off the top of my head. I want to say the 25th of March, but give or take, I'll confirm with that before I mislead you in the wrong direction. But yeah, we're still working in conjunction with DOE in the development of the proposed plan and the regular decision. Yeah, and we're really interested in hearing what public thinks about public comment period. I know we're aiming towards having something staggered. We want to make this very effective and accessible to the public. We know that these are very extensive documents, so we want to be conscious of that fact. Yeah. That's it.
Thank you. Sorry to step on you.
No, you're good.
Okay, I really appreciate all the discussion and conversation and presentation, your willingness to come and hang out with us. Couple questions for you. You mentioned that cleanup levels might change in the final, and what happens if the cleanup levels get lower and you've already dug a site? Do you reopen it?
It's happened.
Okay.
It has not happened often for the most part. Most of the cleanup level changes, like, I'll give one example. Traditionally, radionuclide direct clean exposure clamps were based on a dose-based factor of a 15 mrem per year, whereas EPA standards have gone to a risk-based factor. So that conversion from that dose to that risk-based is important to me in the math, but when you actually look at the cleanup levels, it affects the numbers, the scale at which remediation happens, because there tends to be a little bit of certainty over excavation. You end up being fine for the most part. Exceptions to that have occurred. I can name a couple of sites in each area where it's been like, oh, this one's just a little bit above, and they went back and additional RTD is required at those areas. Same thing applies here. I can tell you from the evaluations of both K and N that they both looked good up against the final cleanup levels. More what we had to deal with that was interesting on these was some of the kind of the continuing sources to groundwater contamination and how we manage those.
Nice.
Can you repeat the question again?
When the cleanup levels change after you've done an interim action on a website. After the site's been characterized and closed officially with all the paperwork, and then the cleanup level drops, say, how far do you go back and reopen the site, or do you, that was the question.
Okay.
Okay. The other question I had was, you mentioned that there were typically 3 or 4 options in the proposed plan, and one of them is no action. The HAB values, we prefer removal, treat, dispose.
Sure.
So do you ever do an all action option in the proposed plan? So we know the full spectrum, we do nothing and do everything, and then we're going to land somewhere in the middle, but having that full perspective.
Depending on what you define as all. Like, for example, there's generally not a comprehensive alternative that looks at excavating down to groundwater per se. It's usually not packaged as an alternative because of the differences that kick in for standards of 15 feet, things like that. Usually, what you've seen in the past on the proposed plans for context is usually kind of a little bit more of a stagger of alternatives. In K area, it's a lot more nuanced. I think they're all pretty aggressive alternatives, and the difference in the alternative K area really has more with how groundwater contamination is managed. Most all of the wayside options are keep digging. There's some differences on 1 or 2 sites, but in area is a lot more nuanced because of the TPH contamination of how you address that TPH contamination. So Tom, there's not necessarily a total marina style excavation alternative in there, but there usually tries to be a range of aggressiveness because you want to balance, because in the absence of that, you're usually looking at institutional controls to manage contamination, and institutional controls bear a management cost too, which may not be effective for DOE. So there's no such thing really for us, because the no action alternative is really not viable. It's just something we have to look at. But even an alternative that doesn't include active remediation, it still has a management burden for DOE, which may not be advantageous for the public as stakeholders.
And TPH is total petroleum.
Thank you.
And so when you're looking at the management costs for institutional controls, how far in the future do you go? Some of these are going to be thousands of years.
Usually the most active costs go about 150 years out, because then you start to see the tapering of it. And so that's when you get into those net present value calculations and things like that. But usually, if they're needed for 150 years, not all of these need 150 years, but that's usually the furthest horizon that's out from a costing standpoint is 150 years. That's what's been in the previous horizon.
Judy?
Pam?
A couple questions. This committee has had briefings over the years in regard to stream sequestration and what material will be used for the sequestration. And we're aware of politics, which we don't need to get into, but where are you at in resolving that and coming up with what it is you're gonna do?
That's exactly what that addendum that I alluded to is focused on. If we were moving forward with a PRB, with a permeable reactive barrier, we would be looking at the same chemicals that have been used previously for the interim treatment and continuing forward with that, which is phosphate and then citrate injections to form that. Right now, we're evaluating if that's even the correct way to go at all. So, and that level of that, so as we're at, we are preparing that addendum evaluation that will address that specifically.
Okay. So my next question is kind of at a higher level of altitude. So we have particularly new PAP members that are wondering when the discussion about future uses comes up. And I've tried to explain that that has happened and it's in the land use plan and other documents. Can you explain from an RIFS perspective how you look at that goal that has been set and approaching achieving that goal?
Certainly. So from a land use perspective, the DOE's vision from the land use plan of the areas what we call conservation and preservation uses. Not to speak for EPA or ecology here, but EPA and ecology, the language we use is that they believe that other uses are possible, and DOE has agreed to use what we call an unrestricted cleanup threshold. Unrestricted sounds like a big word. What it really means is a residential use scenario. And that's the values we use in evaluating the risk is EPA's residential use, but that's considered an unrestricted use. That's based on a person living out there, growing a garden, having a certain level of subsistence living on it, with animals and bringing up tap water from the site and those kind of things. So that's the scenario. Again, DOE's view of the land use is really conservation preservation, but all the cleanup levels are set to that unrestricted or residential type scenario. We do present within the RIFS other scenarios, like there's different tribal use scenarios, and those are evaluated and presented in the RIFS, but they aren't ultimately the basis for cleanup levels that are presented in the proposed plan.
Thank you.
Certainly.
But legally, the end use of the site isn't defined until the ROD is finalized.
Correct.
Yeah. ROD is the record decision, if you want to say ROD.
Yeah. I'm bad at it's hard not to, right? I try to do better on acronyms.
Is there anyone else in queue?
No, I do not have anyone else in queue right now.
Okay. Let's give it 30 seconds just in case someone.
Just from, for the public, the proposed plan, about how long are those, each individual?
Each one's about 50 pages, and they're, I'll be honest, they're 50 meaty pages. It's not a casual read. But it is still a much more succinct read than going through the RIFS, and I think it's presented in a fashion that's digestible. They come usually with a fact sheet that's usually 2 or 3 pages, hasn't been drafted yet. It gives you the high level what's going on. And then the proposed plan has a pretty structured organization where you can kind of look to the different components, but it's 50 pages if you want to read through it in depth. I mean, that's with large, full-size figures and stuff like that.
And it comes with a really long list of hyperlinks that you can go and look at all the older reports too.
Okay. So give document numbers or anything like that?
They'll all be in the proposed plan. That's really the biggest, the most important document number is going to be that remedial investigation feasibility study. I mean, there's many other great documents that the link for it as that's finalized, we'll put that into the administrative record so that you can just get to it right straight from a link route. If I quote it off, I have the document number, if I quote it off the top of my head.
And the RINFSs are in Rev 0 draft right now on the administrative record, so you can find those.
And what you're saying is that the addendum would be coupled with the proposed plan?
It more accurately be coupled with the remedial investigation feasibility study, and then the proposed plan will speak to both of them as being part of the RIFS process.
And it would fit in with one of the alternatives?
It would actually probably modify all of the alternatives. areas.
Okay.
And that's a little cleaner rather than doing like a Rev 1 of the REFS, which, because these are a little bit cumbersome documents, to have kind of a clean standalone addendum or that's our intent certainly, for the public or any party to be able to say, okay, this is what this did to the alternatives and this is why this makes sense.
Okay.
But I haven't yet read it or anything like that. That's certainly my intentions of how cleanly it will work.
Okay.
And Roberto, you mentioned the goal is to stagger these a little bit so they're not both dropping at once. If they do both drop at once, would it be better if we wanted to write advice on them to do a two-part advice, or would that be better as two separate pieces of advice? Just two agencies, yeah.
Two separate.
Two separate.
Only because it's, I mean, from my voice, Tom, I mean, it's so much clearer, like in getting the comments, like what I would want to have is like something that's ambiguous, like, were they asking that relative to in or K? It makes it much clearer.
Makes things very, ambiguous.
That works September 1.
It's gonna be a busy fall.
Okay, so we will look forward to seeing you in August or October.
Sounds great. Yeah, I'll work with Lindsay and it will be in the back of my head on the timing as we look at this, because obviously we'll be having to do it for the public communication pieces and whatnot anyway, so hopefully we'll have lots of helpers to help me remember where we're at. So look forward to it.
Is there a public meeting involved with this comment period?
It's something you can request at the time.
So not required?
No, not required.
Okay.
And that's usually kind of managed on an as needed, that when we get to that step, I work with Roberto, I work with Ryan, I work with whomever on, okay, what's the level of request and desire point?
Okay.
Okay,
One more question?
30 seconds? All right, if we don't have any more people in queue, let's go ahead and do our break.
Yes.
And we're still running 45 minutes ahead of schedule.
So a 15-minute break, which means we'll come back at 5 till.
Sure.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Andy. Appreciate you both.
And Jeff. And
Thank
Okay. All right. On for our post-break activities, starting with regulatory status update. Tom, anything to say about that?
Yeah, so because the briefings we got today were sort of river corridor centric, I asked the regulators to just sort of go down the river corridor and just a quick update on the different waste sites that we've been interested in, the different operable units that aren't 100K and but if you want to talk about 100K and that's fine too. But just a quick up and down the river corridor to get us oriented with the new members, what's coming down the road, what's sort of stalled, but what we want. With that, I will let the agencies decide who's going first.
Yeah, well, real quick, I'm not logged on to Teams call, but is Cass, are you on?
Let's see.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we wanted to introduce the new member of our team, but I don't think they're able to join right now since we have.
Sure. When they come on, we'll take our time.
Yeah. So, I guess EPA have to go first regarding, all right. So, in this case, we're gonna go downstream of the river corridor, and we're gonna start off with Jeff. If there's any regulatory updates for 1BC?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things over the last 13, 14 months or so is that we've been holding back on signing off on the RDRA work plan since it came out in about Oh, thank you. Remedial Design, Remedial Action Work Plan, which takes the record of decision and translates this into a work plan to follow to meet the objectives of the ROD. And taking some time to allow DOE and the tribes to work through some cultural issues that they were working through, and that has gone very well. So we're coming close. We're revisiting the original schedule in that, and we'll be signing and moving that forward soon, and that's exciting. We also spent the day yesterday walking the far shoreline of the river, trying to find some representative sites, nail down some representative sites for a biological study looking at macroinvertebrate populations in the shoreline. And that's part of the ROD, we're putting together. So that's something that's going on at BC as well. So right now, the remedial design, remedial action work plan, and that bio study has been a lot of the action at BC, and we're moving forward through that, and I couldn't be happier with that. So, but that's about it for BC right now. So I guess that brings you to Kay.
Yeah, and even though we just had a presentation on 100K, so something might be redundant or repeated rather. So for 100K, just kind of want to highlight some action from last year. We recently negotiated with the Department of Energy several milestones, and that is due to a myriad of reasons. And part of them involved impacts that came from COVID-19 shutdowns that impacted the workforce, as well as the materials and resources that were needed for the site. Other things included technical complexities such as a 130 waste site that Andy was just talking about earlier. We initially thought they had a small footprint. As you saw earlier, it is a lot more extensive than we had imagined. So naturally, things had to change, and we had to be flexible with that. And as mentioned earlier, we're still continuing the review of the remedial investigation feasibility study, RIFS, is also how it's known as. And I've been reaching out to several stakeholders and other groups, travel groups, for their comments or perspectives on the RIFS. Apologies if I have not yet directly responded, but I do acknowledge that we have seen them. I'm not going to repeat too much other than it has been more extensive than we anticipated. There is that northeast quadrant that we're focusing on and keeping a full check on with DOE and working closely with them on that. Another item, regulatory status item, is that we're continuing the review of the Cape Basin sludge treatment and packaging alternatives analysis. It's a very wordy title for a document, and that was sent to us by DOE in, I want to say, September 2022, and that was for completion of a milestone, which was to select a Cape Basin sludge treatment and packaging technology and propose new interim sludge treatment and packaging milestones. So that is something that EPA is currently working towards on now. And that's apart from what I just mentioned earlier. It's negotiated as a separate package, and there's one lot I can negotiate, but I'll probably confuse myself, and I want to confuse you all either. And yeah, regarding the Cape West phase, that's something that we're working towards with DOE, and it seems like September of 2024, calendar year 2024 is the end date, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. That's for, and that's touching on Cape Basin and soil remediation for groundwater. Right now, there have been several rebound studies conducted throughout the site, the 100K site, as well as soil flushing. In particular, soil flushing had been put on pause for the K East system, and that is primarily due because of the weather. It gets really cold up here, so we don't want to freeze up those systems. And as the weather is starting to warm up a bit, and then warm up a bit, DOE and the contractors are going to be looking at when's the optimal time to restart that. And that's all I have right now on 100K. Let's see, Annie, are you on?
And also Cass came out, just so you know, so like Jen, you
okay.
can do the introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
There she is.
Want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
My name is Cass Galasso. I'm new to the Region 10, Section 4 Hanford team. I'm currently located in Fairbanks, but hoping to come down in a couple months and meet everyone in person.
Welcome. Yeah, she's in Alaska, so she will move down here when the winter gets over down there. So kicking over to further downstream to the 300, 296. I don't know if Annie McCartney is on, but if not, I'll just give it a quick
There she is.
blurb.
She's right there.
Oh, she's right there?
Yeah, she's on.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sure. So in the 300 area, a couple things going on. The 61811 area by Energy Northwest, there are a couple of wells planned for installation this year. So we're looking forward to starting to get some more data and monitoring in that area. And in addition to that, DOEs and their contractors are updating some modeling and running a bunch of different scenarios that we can use to compare against the data that we see coming in. So that's the first annual evaluation, and then they'll be doing those annually as long as they're of use to us, I guess. And so the first one will be about by June this year. That's all I had.
Okay. Thanks, Annie. And one other thing that I have is the 200 IA1. They're still waiting site characterization to fully document the need for remedial action. That falls under Craig Cameron's purview. Of course, he cannot make it right now. And also to reiterate the EPA statement in the February full board board meeting. We'll be beginning negotiating the next set of near-term milestones, which are approximately the M15, M16 milestones. And that is all we have for EPA.
Cool. Well, from our end, we didn't have a lot to update outside of what EPA said, but we were going to provide a bit of an update on the site-wide permit. And then I know, Tom, you had asked if I could just provide like a high-level overview of what units in the permit are kind of in the river corridor area. So I'll kick it over to Eddie to talk about the permit in general, and then I can just provide some of the names of those units out along the river corridor. Eddie, I'll kick it over to you.
All right, appreciate everybody. Good afternoon. Appreciate you having me for the committee meeting today. So as Ryan had said, I'm giving a little bit of update on Rev 9. I know a lot of folks are anxious about when public comment may kick off for Rev 9. So I think nothing has changed as far as our previous comments regarding this. The hope is to have this out for public comment in 2024. As we get closer to locking down more addenda, we'll identify a specific date and certainly communicate that to the Hanford Advisory Board, among other constituents and organizations. At this time, as of last week, we had 50% of our facilities locked down. So to put that into some context, I believe we have 52 facilities in the Rev 9 permit, and 26 of them are currently locked down. For some further context on the progress we're making and what we hope to do in the next couple of weeks here, we have approximately 12 facilities that are near lockdown. And what that means is that we've already gotten the certified submittals from Department of Energy for these facilities, and we have one or two of the addenda for these facilities as a final review before locking it down. So those final reviews typically take, depending on the addenda and the complexity of the facility, possibly 1 to 2 to 3 weeks to complete. So on top of the 26 facilities that are currently locked down, we anticipate to lock down approximately 12 more within the coming weeks here. So we're really getting close to that point of getting many of our facilities out of workshops with Department of Energy, getting the certified submittals from Department of Energy, and doing those final reviews before we lock it down and prepare the Rev 9 permit for permit production. And I'll hand it back over to you, Ryan, unless there's any questions.
Cool. Let's see quite yet. So committee, Tom, everybody. So just some of the units that are along the river corridor area. I'll just go by type of unit. One is the closing unit groups. We have the 324 building specifically. So EPA is lead on the facility, but when I say 324, we've got 12 dangerous waste management units within 324 that ecology regulates. So there's that. I put this on the list, but it's not necessarily river corridor. The 400 area, we have some waste management units over there that are next to FFTF. For operating unit groups, we've got the 325 building. There's some permitted dangerous waste management units over in that facility. And then heading a little bit north there, we have the 183H solar evaporation basin, which is near H reactor. It's about 500 feet from the river. And then we have the 300 area process trenches. There's 2 trenches that'll be in the permit for that. And that's kind of it. We got a bunch more units, but they're more central. So. Yeah, so that's kind of what we have today.
So do we want to have DOE perspective on the regulator briefings?
A perspective on the perspective.
Flip the script.
Lindsay, did you say DOE had something on?
I have, or Mr. White or Weegor has something to share.
So 324, just a quick update, based on the last time we were expecting February might have asked these questions. So we are, and Annie, correct me if I'm misspeaking on this though, we are working closely with EPA to ensure we are having a productive and protective cleanup of the 324 and underlying soil. We are working currently to develop a focused feasibility study to evaluate paths forward and document the best cleanup approach per the CERCLA criteria. And I will not answer what CERCLA is because I do not actually know that acronym cold at this point, but I'm hoping. That's one of those acronyms my brain just doesn't remember.
I think CERCLA stands for super fun.
We do expect that proposed plan will be made public once available. We're targeting sometime in the fall, but that's kind of a moving target as we finalize things. And then we are committed to working closely with EPA on the path forward for soil remediation.
Excellent. Okay. I had a couple quick ones. Roberto, you mentioned 100K sludge option study. Is that publicly available or is that pre-decisional still?
My understanding is that it should be available on the administrative. I do not have the document number off the top of my head. I can look that up and see if it's on AR.
Okay. And then the M15 and M16 milestones, when do we expect the public comment period for those? Is it too early to tell, or next year, or what?
I don't have information off the top of my head, sorry.
Thanks.
I'll back him up. It's the Comprehensive Environmental Response and Liability Act.
Compensation. and
Compensation.
I forgot to see.
Won't remember this. I'm fired now.
Is there public comment on the remedial design work action plan?
What's your plan?
RBC, RD.
No, that's already been done. Okay. So it's already been completed. It had gone through the signature and had come to us. And through our coordination meetings with the nations, we decided to hold off on our signature on it. But it had gone through all of that process before we had got to that point, and then we held out. So,
yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but typically the RDRA, the remedial design, remedial action work plans, don't have a public involvement component.
Okay. What's the proposed plan before that?
Yes, and the ROD.
I just had a quick clarification myself, and my brain didn't catch if I distinguished this or not. When I talk about the evaporation basin and the process tunnel, those are post-closure unit groups, not operating unit groups. Sorry if I didn't make that clear.
Any questions? Leah?
Thank you for sharing about 324 building. I'm wondering if the public comment period, that will come in the form of a proposed plan, is that correct? Yeah. And so when, for timing to brief the HAB and talk more about this, when do you think that timing would be right?
Probably somewhere about within, okay?
Yeah.
We're still at the fairly early stage for the focused feasibility study. The focused feasibility study moves quicker than other types of documents, but it might be about that same type of timeframe that I'm coming back to you for getting, may not literally be the document, I'm guessing right now.
Okay, so August, October.
I would say later fall than earlier fall.
So October or later.
So it should be on next year's work plan for sure.
Yeah. Roberto, can you remind me for 201A or IA1, what was going on with that?
Yeah, that they're still awaiting site characterization to fully document the need for remedial action at that area.
Okay, thank you. And that's still on schedule for milestones?
There's no milestones.
There's no milestone? That's the adaptive milestone, isn't it?
No,
I don't know.
I don't think it is.
Off my head.
It's a new unit, so I don't think they have milestones for it yet.
That's correct, there's no milestone. This one, was coming out like right towards the tail end of those gap milestone negotiations, was kind of the need for whether or not there would need to be additional supplemental characterization. So Craig and I, there was no milestone placed on it, but that's we're trying to get out in the field to get the characterization data, which would then dictate subsequent schedule.
Okay. And then Ryan, for the Rev 9A permit, just to try to understand this, and Eddie as well, when you say lockdown, does that mean that there are not going to be any changes to the permit while like it's locked down? And then what if you have like a permit mod? Like how does that fit into this whole process of public comment period and
Yeah, I'll kick over to, actually, Eddie, just take this away.
Yeah, no problem. Good question. And, I know there's a lot of terminologies that I'm still trying to learn as the acting deputy program manager at this point in time and taking on this role of like bringing Rev 9 home and getting it ready for public comment. So to answer your question, there the two parts to it, right? So you had mentioned Rev 8C. So Rev 8C remains current. If there are modifications to Rev 8C that are necessary or urgent, we can certainly make those changes. So there's like class one prime modifications that are going on to Rev 8C right now, right? When it comes to locking down facility addenda for Rev 9, what I mean by that is that we have completed our workshops associated with Rev 9. We have resolved all the deficiencies, and we've received a certified copy from Department of Energy. We review that certified copy to ensure that all the changes that we have agreed to are in that final copy. And then we lock it down, only Rev 9, for permit production ahead of the public comment period. So when we do lock something down for Rev 9, that doesn't necessarily stop us from making a modification to Rev 8C if necessary. It just means that Rev 9 documents and addenda are ready to go. They're with our permit production team, and they're churning away, getting that ready for public comment.
That's great. Thank you so much. It makes it a lot more clear.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Tom, do we want to put Tom on the spot and ask for help?
Oh. In the realm of the tri-party agency agreement and those activities, or remediation activities associated with that, health fills a very specific support role to the Department of Ecology. By state law, health is the radiation authority for the state, but we have no purview over mixed waste. So when it comes to things radioactive that affect somebody's remediation or adding quality objective development, we work very closely with ecology to ensure that if they have questions or that we are providing them the support we're supposed to. Megan is transitioning from primarily being a field person to learning how to interface with your folks up at ecology now under Scott Van Ver's mentorship, so that she understands more and more and gets more into the data quality objective development process of things. From a field aspect, which is what I like to do, we work with ecology over the years. We've worked with EPA over the years to ensure that we support them with, in the case of building 324, we used to only have one air sampler and a tritium sampler there. As soon as 324 became more of a site, and as soon as the hazard underneath 324 was identified, we put 2 more air samplers out there so that we could provide that. We're working with DOE to increase our groundwater sampling capabilities out there. And again, we're not drilling our own holes. We'll take split samples right with their sampling organization, so that the radiochemistry laboratory that the Department of Health lab has in Shoreline is looking at the same apples that DOE sends to gel laboratories to be analyzed for. Again, now the difference between what we look for and what DOE or the contractors may be looking for is our lab is an environmental laboratory, so we're looking for as the most minimal detectable level of activity that we can see. Or a percentage of a regulatory level. So if you look at our data, we're going to say, just for example, we can do 10 picocuries or something, and gel will return a result of, say, well, we saw 1 microcurie or something. So again, the difference there is we're looking at the environmental activity in that water sample, where again, DOE is looking for the regulatory, the proportion of a regulatory requirement. We work quite closely with HMIS, which is Hanford Mission Integrated Support, is that what it's called? Hanford Mission. Thank you. Thanks, man. It used to be MSA. It finally took me 15 years to figure out what MSA stood for. Now I have to learn a whole new thing. But again, we look at the same isotopes. We split sample. Coincidentally, we soil sample and vegetation sample near building 324 every year. And that's alongside HMIS sample collectors as well. That's a split sample. In the future, our work with ecology, we have some presentations to make where we make our radiochemical analyses that started back in 1965 available. And we explain to that ecology what that means, pertinent to the remediation that's going on at this time or going on in the past. We have, it's amazing, we printed off all our agriculture data one time. It goes back to the 60s, and it was a stack of paper that thick because post-Fukushima, or immediately post-Fukushima, the Department of Agriculture was asking, like, well, do you know what's in our grapes? Well, yeah, you know what's in the apples and the peaches and all the other stuff too. So again, there was a concern at that point in time. Again, that's kind of the general idea of where we interface with the tri-party agencies and the milestones and stuff like that. The environmental sciences group, which is what I work into, our main mission is to conduct quality assurance, environmental oversight of the Department of Energy's environmental monitoring program. So short-term, real succinct, if DOE has 100 air samplers out there, we're sampling in 10 places alongside with them, comparing our analytical results and saying, yay, barely, this is good, or we have a problem with this one. Through that, we've developed a method by which we can almost do a forensic back calculation, looking at historical air sample analyses, where if we know about the time frame, there may have been a slight exceedance of the regulatory limit. We can kind of narrow that down and look at what it might have been. Where this really came before wasn't for DOE really, but because of the skills we've developed over the years, support, doing this work at Hanford, we were able to backtrack and find out where the material from the Harborview event went to and determine that, which is kind of wild, because that's an urban environment where we were doing our modeling versus, you know, the Hanford site, which is as close to a bowling alley as you can possibly get, right? But we were able to do some work out there, and that's just, again, that's because of the skills that we were able to import to that specific situation that we weren't here. We go statewide, we've been at Magnuson Park, formerly known as Sandpoint Naval Air Station, looking at radium. From back in the old days, I guess the Navy guys would bring in their seaplanes, repaint the radium dial gauges, dump the radium they didn't use down the sink, and there we go. That's that. And soccer, yeah, that's a pretty good soccer field. The indoor soccer field right next to where that repair station used to be. We do a broad range of things in the environmental sciences section. We have 4 of us here, plus our section manager. There are 3 people on the western side of the mountains who do our laboratory interface, our essentially vendor analyses if we go look at a laboratory, the contractor or someone. When Gel got the contract for DOE, we sent 4 people there to do a comparative study to ensure that they can function, Gel can function to the proper level method, well, EPA method 114, which is basically lined out for chemical and radiochemical analyses. A little bit of news, I could talk about this crap all day long, but you guys get me wound up. They know, my people I work with know not to talk to me. Megan Perkins here is, like I said, Megan is a radiochemist, and she's been kind of like my understudy for the last 7 years, and will continue to do so until I retire in a couple of years, so that'll be good. Those of you who know Earl Fordham is the Department of Health Eastern Regional Director. He is being moved into more of a mentor position, and John Martell, who was our radioactive emissions section manager, is being promoted up to become, in the Washington Management System, Washington Management Series of employees, he's a regional director here. So hopefully, the benefit to that, the HAB, will be that John will be actively coming to more and more of the HAB meetings, and we'll have a good, strong presence there. With that said, Crystal Matthey, those folks who work at ecology, or, you know, you guys, UMM meetings, you get to see Crystal and her crew quite often. Crystal is now the acting radioactive emissions section manager, but that's more stuff versus getting rid of anything. So it's like the people who work at Energy Northwest, they all have 6 jobs, right? So Crystal now has like 4. You guys know what that's like. So yeah, I don't know if that's what you really wanted me to talk about, Sue, but that's a quick overview of, go ahead.
Well, could you clarify, you guys take all kinds of samples, you make direct gamma measurements, I assume, you have TLDs.
Yes,
those are not split samples, those are your own.
So,
and the air samples are your own, you're not cutting the air filter in half.
No, so I think, Dan, that's good. So what I should have said with the air samples is we are co-located. So we collect a series, we have like 5 air samples that we collect we have 20 air samples we collect twice a month. And what that is that's to maintain approximately the same volume that went through that air sampler as the DOE air samplers. So that we can make a comparative statement. When you bring up the dosimeters, the on-site dosimeters, and we typically are co-located with the DOE dosimeter, but for the dosimeters that are on the periphery, so like the Hanford side of the Columbia River, and that starts at Verita Bridge and runs all the way down to below to Kennewick. I don't know if you know where Morgan Island is, but it's across from Columbia Park down in Kennewick. We have 28 dosimeters that we collect every six months. Those are old PN&L dosimeter stations that when PN&L got out of that dosimeter game, we were able to make a valid argument that said this is the gamma dose at the site. This is the gamma dose where if this is the no trespassing sign, you can walk up to that. I mean, the Hanford patrolman could be there going, I really don't like being here, but you can be there. So that's where those dosimeters are. So again, That's what we do with that. That is the gamma demonstrate, the environmental, hopefully it's the environmental gamma demonstrate that we see at that site, twice a year. But yeah, in that case, Dan, those are our own samples. We do have samples that we collect in Franklin County that are downwind of 324 or PSP or N. I mean, I can remember a colleague of mine and my boss bobbing around in the boat out of N when they remediated this. I was an EP at emergency preparedness at the time. They remediated the sand filter they called the golf ball. Randy and John were sitting out there taking their sample because a fisherman could have been there, right? So that's kind of what we do is we look at public safety. When Purex happened, Jeff just brought this up. We had 2 teams that started in Richland to work their way back around the entire perimeter of the site, taking high volume air samples because it's places mom and pop America could have got to, right? You couldn't get past the fence because the patrol would stop you. But we wanted to make sure that at least at the perimeter of the site for that specific event, there would have been no public harm.
Another question? Dan?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. When you and the DOE contractor measurements, when they disagree, who's right?
I got called in. Just so you guys know, good question, man. We're right, damn it. No.
I thought we were friends.
No, you know, and I'm trying to think if in my history with environmental, that has ever happened.
Hasn't happened with mine.
Have you read Crystal Matthey's master's thesis?
No, she doesn't let us read her stuff. No, I haven't.
Well, confession, Crystal Matthey was my master's student.
Right.
So at WC Tri-Cities. And air sampling is a very tricky thing. You can put 2 air samplers right next to one another. One of the top particle, the other one doesn't. They're not going to agree.
No, that did happen because PFP before remediation happened, our air samplers were less than 3 feet apart from each other. The DOE MSA reported, hey, we got a plutonium particle on our air sampler and we saw nothing. Right? So it's just the nature of it. Yeah, I'm sorry, man, I interrupted.
No.
Real, but you know, again, I have, like I said, I haven't read hers. Now I gotta go, Crystal, let me read your thing because Dan's got stuff. And, no, I think we do work pretty well with HMIS specifically and DOE generally. I think we work really well with ecology and EPA. Again, it's hard to be, I used to be an air inspector, so I did the commercial facilities. So your license says this, and the law says this. And since I don't get to interpret the law, I have to make sure you can conform with the law. So I believe in the old NRC motto of trust, yet verify. Right? But in environmental work, we're looking at really, really, really low levels of radioactivity. And that's something that is kind of different.
Do you have a question?
Go ahead.
I'm just in share observation. I retired from being executive director of Hanford Communities in 2020. But for many years, part of my job was to be the liaison to the M County emergency people. And when we had drills at Energy Northwest or DOE, I was the local government interface person and observed the Department of Health, the Oregon Department of Energy interacting. And the Department of Health plays an extraordinary role in terms of what might be out there. That feeds into the decision-making process of what's going to be done. And they work seamlessly. Somebody was asked a question at a HAB meeting about emergency response or, well, what's going to happen if, and we did a drill that wasn't DOE, it was what happens if one of the dams breach upstream. And that was years ago. The federal building is underwater to the 5th floor in 2 days. So we had to look at where the floodplains are. and, think about what's where and, how it's managed, but, I miss those, interactions. It was very interesting, and it made me feel good as a resident of this region, how well people work together.
I remember that. I remember working with you at various and sundry UDACs or JICs, or UDAC, Meteorological Unified Dose Assessment Center, JIC, Joint Information Center, and I remember the flood exercise. I worked for Franklin County Emergency Management.
As I told people, I moved my safe deposit box. It was gonna be underwater.
Move over there. No, but again, I think, our system is if there's anything that I would like to see changed about how we do things, is we're gonna have it always sampling the same place, and that has validity, right? But if we haven't seen anything for 20 years, let's move that place. Let's sample someplace else. I think in DOE's mind, we have a discrete number of sampling sites for each media. So let's move one of them if we have to. Let's move 5 of them if we have to. And look someplace else. Because it's an interesting field.
Isn't there a value though to the continuity?
Well, see, that's what I'm saying though, but you're right, Rob, there's a tremendous value of continuity. But if I've sampled soil at one site, and I can go back into our database and say, we've been sampling this soil since 1995, and it's now 2024, and we have not seen any change in the radiological results in that soil. If I have 30 soil samples that DOE lets me make a year, right? Why don't I work with them and say, well, we're done here because there ain't nothing there. Let's move this soil sample to another soil sample site. So let's be, yes, I'm not trying to throw away the continuity, but it's like, if it's this, then let's go look someplace else.
Or drop that one every other year.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Forgive me, but the most important result in environmental protection is the null result, the non-detect, the one that's less than what we can see, and therefore, since what we can see is way below what we care about, the non-detect, I think, is the most important for reassuring the public.
I'm not arguing with you, but I'm saying let's look someplace else.
But one of the most dangerous things that we run into a lot on the site is at Hanford is, well, this is what we've always done, so we need to continue to do what we've always done. I think the question is about staying curious from a scientific standpoint, and just because we identified a spot, that doesn't mean it maybe is the right spot to do it. That's not to move it, but I think we constantly need to be thinking about, is what we're doing the appropriate thing? And after 20 years, that's quite a data set.
Well, there's value in continuity. So, but if you say this site is going to be every other year, and on the off years, we're going to find a new one and check it. That way you keep the continuity.
I think, but again, to me, you guys gotta understand, when I was a young man, I was trained to be a cavalry scout, right? So I'm always wanting to look over the hill. I might not like what I see when I look over the hill, because there might be more of them than there are of me. Obviously, there probably are, but that doesn't stop me from, I don't want to stop looking. I don't want to stop looking, because Hanford's huge. And no offense, but you guys just discovered a new site here in this the 200 dash, whatever it is, that you were talking about that didn't make it into Rev 9 or something, or, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't mind helping characterize that site. Sure. But I don't know, sorry, I'm just Jack Armstrong, kind of idealistic, who again, I'm 65 years old.
Well, presumably you're citing those locations at the areas where you expect to have the first results.
And that's what we did, Rob, when they set up we mirrored the PNNL group,
right,
environmental monitoring program. And that's what, when PNNL was displaced from the environmental monitoring contract by Mission Support Alliance, we maintained that environmental monitoring system and then picked up the dosimeters all on our own, because that's worth doing. Again, I think it's all worth doing. But like I said, if we have looked, so I'm not advocating that we don't take water samples and soil samples out by 100F, because there's a finite to it, right? Don't want to stop doing that. But if we've looked someplace, we haven't seen anything for 20 years, we gotta look someplace else.
So one of the things that we've been tasked as a committee with this year is to work with COE to look at how DOE communicates risk and how we define risk at the site. So this might be a good conversation to wrap into that discussion with you as the regulator here for radiological risk, and then have the non-radiological risk folks in EPA and ecology also discuss part of the conversation. So I think this is a good sort of prequel to a conversation we're going to be having in the work plan this year.
I think the other thing I need to say, in this, not to back off my own little curiosity streak, quality assurance is a very specific subset of a whole group of activity, right? So if we get, 20 soil samples a year, roughly, that means DOE is taking at least 200 soil samples a year. So, if not more. So what again, my advocacy would be to move our co-location to a different co-located site. I guess that's right. Again,
that's different.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dan, that's, one of those things where you think everyone knows what I know, right? And again, quality assurance, and I first ran across this at Boeing, thank God I didn't do 737s. But if you had 1,000 bolts, the quality assurance is that we inspected and did all the way back to the ore that those bolts were made from on at least 100 of that block of 1,000 bolts. So again, it's that same idea here. Again, we go all across this air, it's TLDs where we're co-located, so environmental dose rates, fauna, when we can get, those road strikes, and the gentleman was talking about road strikes this morning, I was like, oh, no wonder it's really easy for us to get Hanford elk, but we have to go work with Fish and Wildlife to get background elk from the other side of the mountains, and that's a bear sometimes, because those guys don't want to give up their elk. But again, so again, it's that whole range of media, soil, air, water, vegetation. That's turned into a UH briefing. Sue, thank you. But yeah, and again, if you guys know where the EPA used to be, where we were upstairs, we're over there on Brownlee Boulevard. Anyone's welcome to stop by and say hello. Most of us don't fight. Although we have been accused of being spiky. And I do want to, Rob, you really bring up a good thing. Those HWEC people, Hanford Workforce Engagement, folks who were talking about this morning. I know I think we had the same experience. I haven't been around here very long when I moved and got involved with working with some of the older wartime Hanford workers who had retired and were helping as county emergency management volunteers. Some of those guys had just tremendous issues in getting help for their exposures and their health problems from working on the site during those times. I think the Hanford workforce people are really good people to know, and their word should be spread out, spread throughout the community. Also, the building next to us is where the Department of Labor folks are, who actually end up writing that check to the people who have the injuries. So again, that's a dual thing. It's really worth doing. If you go see them, come upstairs, talk with us, show you our toys. Not that, if you've seen one radiation detector, you pretty much see them all. So.
Are there any other specific questions? Because we're going to be moving on to the next phase of the meeting. And so for health, and Tom has talked about the link to risk, defining and communicating risk, and that's on the work plan for some time. But definitely one of the pieces of advice, right, that has been asked for specifically.
Good. Okay, well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you for everyone who tried this new sort of idea, and it wasn't death by PowerPoint, it was a discussion, and I sort of think there's value there, so thank you. We're going to move on to committee business, so Yeah, everyone's welcome to stick around, but it's gonna get boring potentially, so, thank you for having to talk.
Thank you all for your time.
So, wait for Dan to get back.
I think he's busy.
All right, well, we won't wait for Dan to get back. So we've got some news, I guess. Some stuff happened over the past couple of weeks. We were talking with the ESC, Executive Steering Committee, used to be the EIC, which is made up of the chairs and vice chairs of all the committees and the board chair and vice chair and the national liaison. Had a conversation with DOE headquarters and the other TPA agencies. And the decision has been made that if you're an alternate on the board, you're not allowed to be a chair or vice chair as of October 1st of this year. There is a few of us that are currently alternates that are serving as chairs. And there are a few of us that are currently alternates that are in the packet for this year as primaries. So DOE has agreed that as long as the term of office starts October 1st, that anyone who's in the packet as a primary can be assumed to be approved as of October 1st. So we're making that assumption. But each committee gets to decide whether they want to have elections now or whether they want to have elections in August, with the term of office starting October 1st. There are benefits to either, but the one thing to know is that we have our annual retreat/workshop where all the leadership gets together, and that's outgoing leadership and newly elected leadership, and that's in June. And what we do in that meeting is we set the agenda for the HAB and for all the different committees of the HAB for the next fiscal year. So it runs from October 1 to September 30th. So it'd be good to have, if there's a change in leadership, it would be good to have elections prior to that. So the new incoming leader, chair, vice chair, can be engaged in the conversation so they know what they're going to be chairing for the next year. And so there's a couple decisions we need to make. One, do we want to have elections today or in August? I think are the two options because we're not really having a full meeting in April. And then we need to either do that or not. And then I wanted to sort of take part of open forum today. We heard a lot of different stuff about different things that are coming next year. I want to make sure we've had the conversation in committee to send whoever gets elected to the leadership workshop with a list of stuff that we want to talk about in this committee next year. So we're bringing something to the table that's informed from everybody and the conversations we've had. Like I said, I'm in the packet for as primary next term. So I don't know.
Out of curiosity, who's your alternate?
My alternates are Max and Matt.
So you guys still get 3?
Correct.
Yes.
They have 2 alternates.
But only one primary. And so we all sort of collaborate to figure out what the position of Oregon is, or Oregon Department of Energy. So I'm going to open the discussion and see if anyone feels strongly either way. It is Super Tuesday, so I have a propensity for elections today, but it's not my decision, it's the committee's decision. So anybody have any thoughts?
I think we should proceed with electing if we have people interested in serving.
Okay.
I agree.
Do we have people interested in serving? Facilitation team will look at you.
You were the only nomination and for the position of chair.
Okay,
so far.
is anyone interested in serving as vice chair? Is Larry on the,
No, he's not.
okay.
I would nominate Pam.
They can't have two offices.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that, sorry.
So I guess the question is anyone in the committee who is a primary member interested in being the vice chair of the committee? And it's a lot of fun. Highly recommend it. I started off as a vice chair.
So how many committee members are we missing today, right now?
Do we know how many members we have in the committee that are primaries? Or
Just a minute, we'll have that for
Josh
you.
does have that information.
Awesome.
Josh just updated everything.
I see here.
Thanks, Josh. Oh, who's online? Rose.
Yeah, I guess, I know I'm probably a little bit behind on some of this stuff, and I apologize for that. I had explained at the last meeting that I'm currently doing double duty as I'm now serving as the Yakima Nation Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, as well as my day job. So I've been real busy, but I want to make sure I understand what you have just said, because I think I missed some of this. And I apologize for that, but I do need to be clear. Only primary members can hold any kind of elected office, if you will, within the HABs group and committees. Is that correct?
That is a position that the DOE has made clear to us, yes.
So what then becomes the role of an alternate other than, so if I have, let me ask you this question. What is the role of the alternate then? Explain that to me.
So the alternate is there in case the primary is not available.
Okay, that's what I thought. So if my primary is elected into a leadership position on a committee, and that person is not able to attend the meeting, and I attend in her place, then am I acting as the chair or vice chair or something of that committee at that point?
The answer to that we were given is on paper, yes. But it's sort of not something the HAB has done, and it's not something the HAB is currently interested in doing from the leadership level. So on paper, yes, that would be the case. But in reality, with the HAB, the vice chair would take over if the chair is not present.
Okay.
And Rose, Judy, this has been carried over in a couple different meetings with the ESC. And when this came up, it's that the comment was that the chair and vice chair of the committee are generally selected because of their experience and knowledge. And so they're, in a way, subject matter experts. So if the chair is not there, then the vice chair would pick it up because of their knowledge content. That was the theory behind it.
Right, yeah, I get that. I do get that, but that's just doesn't always fit in those cases as far as level of experience and knowledge and that type of thing. We're just not set up that way, and I just am really having a struggle with understanding then really what role an alternate is able to play if our primary not as engaged or cannot be at these meetings and such. So I guess I don't understand that.
Hi, Rose. I know that we've kind of touched base about this at both the December board meeting as well as the February board meeting, and there were continued conversations with the ESC last week. So the alternate's role is identified in those appointment letters. So if you take a look at your appointment letter, you can see exactly what role that you are appointed to serve on the Hanford Advisory Board. With that being said, if Lorraine, in your case, is unavailable, then you would attend in her place. to provide Yakima's perspective. Does that
But
provide
I
any
can,
information?
but I can still be a member of the committees. I just can't hold an office in the committee. Or is Lorraine actually the member and I just fill in when she can't be there?
So at the subcommittee level, the alternate members can participate, just like members of the public can participate. So in this scenario, that's kind of what that would look like.
But if you and Lorraine are both, here, and we had some advice up for consensus, only one of you would be able to count for consensus, and because Lorraine's the primary, she would be the person who counted. But you could still be part of the conversation for the committee meeting.
That was my next question. That was my next question is I understand Yakima Nation only has one vote on whatever is going on. I get that. And I'm, but as far as being able to speak at meetings and that type of thing, that still has been a problem with me. And you know what? I am not going to have this conversation right now because I don't want to hold anything up, number one. But Lindsay, I think we need to have a conversation, and I think we need to have a conversation with you and myself, Lorraine, and I don't know, we may even have to bring Phil Rigdon in, I don't know. And I think we need to have a separate conversation and not hold up this process here to make sure that we're totally understanding exactly what's going on. And I'll have that conversation with Lorraine and we will reach out to you. How's that sound?
That works for me, Rose. Thank you.
I would think this might be a good opportunity though, because there was a proposal from DOE about in each agenda item, allow.
But that is at the full board meeting.
Yeah.
Let's not talk
Okay.
about it right now.
Fair enough.
Rose, I'm good with taking the conversation offline. I know Amanda's back from her details, so maybe we can all have a joint conversation.
Okay.
I think we need to, I think we need to do that. And the reason I say that is just because the way we are structured and whatnot, I think we need to have that conversation. So we'll arrange that. Did you say Amanda is back from her detail?
She is back from her detail, so I'll touch base with Amanda. And then, perfect. Yep. Thank you, Rose. Go ahead, Tom.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
The previously posed question, there are 18 primary members on this committee.
Okay.
Can you share with us who they are?
Yes.
Can you share my screen?
Actually.
Theoretically.
Are you gonna, I feel like he's being blasted with questions, but Josh, are you gonna post those to Hanford.gov or send them to Patrick for
I
posting?
sent the request this morning. I didn't see they're implemented yet. Oh, there you go.
That's for all. Can you make that larger for old eyes?
We're looking at.
CaRM committee members who are primaries.
But what's going to appear on the website will be.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And the nuance here is it should be the CaRM committee members that are in the packet as primaries for October 1st that we would be eligible to run. So if you're on this list and you want to be vice chair, or if you're in the packet as a primary and you want to be vice chair of this committee, feel free to self-nominate or tell someone to nominate you.
So is Chris Sutton a primary?
He's public at large.
Yeah. So he doesn't have a leadership position right now, does he?
Who's that? Okay.
He's actually, he put in a request to run for vice for Twist.
Oh, okay, good.
He's interested in being vice for Twist.
Okay.
Chuck?
I have gone too long to serve in either position. I'm certainly considering it next time, or next year.
Well, this way, Tom is a really good chair. So
Yeah.
I think if you took it on now, you could give it.
Well.
I mean, you don't officially become official until 1 October. So you've got a few months.
That's a good point. I'm sure I'll have to do it.
We don't have to put you on the spot, but we could decide as a committee to hold some election now and some election later. The operating ground rule says the committee decides how we decide who our leadership is. So we can leave nominations open for vice chair, and you can think about it. Or we can send out an email to all the primaries that are on the committee and say, hey, we don't have a vice chair.
Who wants to step up?
Right, and that way if anyone who's on that list isn't here today, they can rectify the situation.
Yeah, and we'll have an evolution with the other committee as well, so.
Right.
I think that's an excellent idea that we elect chair and we inform all of these people that they're eligible to be vice chair.
The only caveat with that is that they wouldn't be attending the June leadership workshop, the vice chair of CaRM.
Could we extend an invitation to the leadership workshop to nominees to CaRM vice chair?
Could you do your election in
And we could do,
April?
we're meeting next month to consider
go.
vice. So we could have a vice, you have until April to self-nominate or, yeah.
The
Good call,
facilitation team can send out that email.
do the next April meeting.
Yes.
Okay, I nominate Tom. Let's elect him and get on with it.
Second that.
Okay.
I'm laying the hammer down.
So is anyone opposed to Tom continuing to serve in the role as chair of CaRM committee and begin a new term of service October 1st?
Yep.
No, are there any opposition?
Oh, I thought you were expanding my nomination.
So is there any opposition to Tom continuing his role and starting a new term October 1st? Online? Anyone? Then you have a continued chair.
Awesome. Thank you.
Speech.
So, I'll take care of business for speech.
Will you be providing cookies at the next meeting?
Yes, but not the type of cookies that you're thinking of, because the next meeting is gonna be digital.
See, she got so distracted by that comment.
I guess the window's clean.
Yes, you want to hear about cookies.
So,
I saw that was a
so the next meeting is in April, and we're gonna be considering the true advice as long as the issue manager team figures out what the background's gonna look like. I think we have a good path forward on the actual advice point, like I said earlier, but the background needs some tweaking. So we're gonna have a brief digital only meeting. We're not gonna meet in person. So there will be cookies in your web browser, but not.
Tom, Richard Bloom asked this morning, since the presentation on true waste was to Liz and CaRM, would you be open to extending an invitation
Absolutely.
to Liz for your?
If it's a joint meeting and it's digital only, yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
We can do that. It means that consensus is not from one committee, but from two, which is half the board potentially, so it passes forward easier. So yeah, April meeting I'm proposing that we do a remote only, just to consider the advice and elect advice and elect advice.
On the 17th.
Is that the 17th?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Tuesday is the 16th, but there is anticipated to be a all Hanford employee meeting, so we're proposing.
After taxes are done. Okay, so that's that. And we wouldn't expect any briefs. It would just be considering the advice and elections. And maybe talking through some of the work plan stuff if we don't get to it all today. So that's that agenda item. So we don't really have any framing question development for that meeting other than can you run for chair or vice?
And we'll have some more information for June meetings next month on what it is that we can support as far as briefings go.
Great.
Yeah, so that will be next month. I'll have that information for you.
And that the June meeting will also be an opportunity to really look at your work plan going
Maybe, yeah.
to the workshop, the leadership workshop.
Great.
The agencies have to do their part first.
So,
right.
So the work planning process has been in flux over the past 5 years or so. It used to be, back in my recollection, that each committee brought their own shopping list, and then each of the agencies brought their own shopping list, and then at the leadership workshop, they put all the shopping lists together and fill up the cart. Well, what's been happening is the TPA agencies have been collaborating over the past couple of years and coming up with a joint list, and then we've sort of been adding a little bit as necessary, which is much more efficient. We're able to get the leadership workshop done in 1 day instead of 2, but it is. It's important for us to know what we want to talk about as well as what the agencies want us to talk about. So we have some time to think about that. June's going to be crazy for me, but, we will make it work. Rob?
I would like us to consider, and this will be for our meetings, is that we've had this air quality, the sampling, and this was very important. And we have been getting pretty much routine DFLAW reports on the progress, the heater meltup, et cetera. Well, there's another system within the DFLAW, which is their handling system. Okay, and it's STAC. And they will now have at least several months of operation of the signalants in that. And I'd certainly like to think that maybe CaRM and TWIST could have a joint presentation on the progress of DFLAW, but include a heavy conclusion on the air handling there and going out the STAC and what our monitoring is showing.
And the wastewater treatment perhaps.
Yeah, but a lot of that's, look, that's the other side of the plan. That's not DFLAW.
Right.
DFLAW just throws water out, you know, that's already been through evaporator and then out. So, but the point is it's the air cleanup system on the WTP. It's a very complex system. It has basically 9 major segments, and it goes out the STAC, and it's very clean when it comes out, or it's supposed to be. And the reports that somebody issued not too long ago, they felt that our nitriles, our active nitriles, were going to be too high and alarms that everybody should be considered. Well, I'd certainly like to have a presentation that really answered that question, and for once and for all, that no, we're not going to have, or yes, we are, and we're going to have to do something else, or something like that. But I would think that this discussion we had on the monitoring, the environmental monitoring, and that on this, and that could be combined in a joint presentation, and it's just a suggestion.
Yeah, and I think if we could round out that meeting, and this is, puts a timeline on it, is when the WMAC decision comes out. That's also a joint topic. So if we had the WMAC closure plan, and that would be a full joint day.
Right.
As opposed to just trying to do one topic, because that gets a little tricky when you're overlapping just one topic.
Okay. So, and I know, Lindsay, that you say, Rob, you always got me. I'm always telling her what
I'm talking about tanks
and stuff. She's saying, I can't, it's already, you're adding to my thing already, and I got. But I do think that as of last discussions I've had with some people, the nitrate issues are somehow bursting out when I know, you know, I helped design the system. I know what the system is, and I know it's a good cleanup system. And so if it's working right, that should answer the questions. And by then they should have pretty much several months of data on the signalants coming out, and we should know something and put that question to bed quick.
Right.
So kind of related, Rob, but just for awareness, we were going to talk about a little bit tomorrow, but we're looking to bring a joint briefing to the Tanks Committee, potentially cross-cutting, it sounds like it, on the environmental testing for DFLAW that's going to be happening. So that's something we're already thinking about. No, not tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about it tomorrow, but yeah.
Yeah, that was something that Ryan and I talked about, last week a little bit, for a future meeting, and so.
Right. And I think that's an important subject that I'd really like to put to bed.
So just from today's presentations, next year's going to be really busy for this committee. So buckle your shoes. We've got probably 2 proposed plans in the river corridor to look at. Probably October, which is next year. We've got Rev 9, which will still be sort of in public comment potentially towards October. We've got milestone updates for M15 and M16. We've got the proposed plan for 324, the contamination under 324. There's a lot on this plate, so it's going to be fun. Anything? What else do we need to think about? Mia.
I'm probably gonna repeat things that you already have on your list, Lindsay, but massive tour would
Yes.
be wonderful.
Okay.
And also, I don't know if we could have an update on the adaptive milestone approach. It's really confusing. What's the status on it? And the milestones that were in it?
And specifically the prep tool as well.
Yes, and the computer modeling tool.
You want to send me an email with all of that?
Yeah.
Prep tool, modeling.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And then since Annie mentioned 6/18/11 wells going in, I don't know if there will be anything related to that next year.
I'll definitely ask Naomi.
But it might be nice.
We might get a first round of data, but it probably won't be published yet.
Maybe just a progress report.
Yeah.
And then obviously 324 building is kind of a constant. Yeah.
All right, and then do we, all right, if you're looking in your crystal ball, WMAC timeline, which is really a tanks issue, but it's also a waste site closure issue, waste management area closure. So whenever that happens, because I think the comment period was 2018. It's been a while.
I'll follow up. I don't have an answer to that one right now.
Which one is that?
And that's Sea Farm?
Yes, WMAC is, yeah, Sea Farm.
This is more tanks too, but just for awareness, our new comment period was gonna be, I think in April, it's pushed back a little bit now. Probably June, July timeframes, I guess, just for awareness.
Luckily, we don't have anything to talk about with the holistics in this committee.
Acting, Eddie Holbrook is acting.
Okay. What else? So we've talked about the river corridor. We got into the Central Plateau for a moment with the adaptive milestones. Is there anything else that we are interested in talking about on the Central Plateau? Maybe the 200 IA characterization would be right. And we'll bring this list with us to June as well.
But the more that you
Yeah,
can
the
give
more
me
we can get
ahead of time, so for me, like I can't take a look at this and say, yes, no, yes, no.
Right.
I've got to go to my SMEs and say, is this going to be available for a briefing in FY25, yes or no? And so the more I know ahead of time, the more I can have those conversations or track down who that person may be that is providing or that would provide that update, just because like we talked about earlier, people kind of play musical chairs. And so it's just, I want to make sure I'm providing accurate information. So I appreciate the heads up on what it is that the group is looking for.
And I appreciate your responsiveness when we ask for something.
Oh, I tried.
The question though is, when we put something on the work plan, we're not necessarily requesting a brief on it. We just want to be able to talk about it. So even if it's not right, it might make sense to keep it on the work plan and still have the flexibility to discuss it. So.
I think that by keeping some of the topics pretty general, it kind of allows for those more organic conversations. And so my recommendation is that we continue to do that for FY25.
Okay.
So Tom, it's maybe too early and it's maybe the wrong committee, but Ecology sent out an email that you guys probably all had an announcement about a public meeting for the test bed initiative. Is that something we want to follow? I'm concerned about the back end of the test bed initiative, and that is what to do with that product. They're talking about shipping liquids. And I know that's yours down the road, but it may be something.
I think Rob's the one to ask about that.
Yeah,
It looks like Ryan had something to share as well.
I'll see you tomorrow. I was gonna share an update on just the timing specifically, but Rob, go ahead.
No, that's been hot on our list and DOE's not been ready to present it to us. And I'm waiting, or we're waiting. And by the way, congratulations to DOE settling the contract, $45 billion.
Oh, yeah.
That is amazing progress for 10 years.
Goodness.
We're gonna get some good consistencies, I hope.
Up to 45 billion.
I can guarantee it's gonna be fun. Let's see, 3 million a year times 10 is
Hold
30.
your breath on that one, because it still has to go through protest period.
But it looks like they put everybody in the tent.
Yeah.
All the people that are competing against each other on the
I
team.
totally agree, but this is the third time it's been awarded.
BWXT is on the team.
So it's kind of the, I'm not taking it to the bank until we get the protest.
And I will take Rob's congratulations. Thank you very much. I will share it with you.
Because I gave my congratulations to Brian the last time around.
Now we just need Congress to give us $4.5 billion a year to get to 45 over 10 years. So.
The chairman of the House Energy and Water Appropriations Committee is optimistic.
Nice.
All right, Ryan, did you have information?
Two things, you talked about budget, yeah, the Senate just passed their budget, which is a little over $3 billion, so hopefully we'll see that actually Congress pass it next week. So sorry, back to TBI. The comment period, we sent out the 30-day notice about a month ago now, and we keep it intentionally vague in case we have to move the dates around, in case it shifts, but we're looking pretty set at starting that comment period on Monday. This is when the notice will go out, and then we're gonna hold a public meeting at the Richmond Public Library with Energy on March 20th is the plan, and that'll all go out on our public notice on Monday. Pending anything crazy happening, I have to put that in there. I don't think anything crazy is gonna happen, but we're looking pretty good for the timing for March 11th.
And so what,
The public meeting for March 20th.
Oh,
And it'll be a 45-day comment period, starting March 11th, so April 25th or something like that, whatever 45 days is.
Do we have a document to review? Because at this point here, the TBI doesn't have.
Yeah, so the comment period is specifically on Ecology's research, development, and demonstration permit, our draft permit for the 2,000-gallon testbed initiative demonstration.
Okay.
Yeah. And so at the public meeting, Ecology will provide a presentation, largely looking at the permit and some permit information, then Dave will do a presentation on the actual demonstration, so.
Good, thank you.
Excellent.
Okay. So we've sort of been merging committee business and open forum. So let's continue on with open forum for however long we feel like talking. And I think it's been a productive day otherwise.
Let's talk about hockey.
I don't like hockey.
Weird. It's really cold in there.
I don't cast aspersions to those who do like hockey. That's not my thing.
Well, an ex-American player last week got a hat trick.
Nice.
Against, yeah, Morgan Geeky, and 3 goals, 1 game. Excellent. We have 3 players on the Boston Bruins team. We've got Brendan Carlo, and Morgan Geeky, and Washington.
On which team, Rob?
The Boston Bruins.
Wow.
Yes. 2 of them are in the front line, first line, and 1 in the second line.
And the only hockey team, well, I grew up in DC, so I like the Caps. But, you know, in Hartford, it was always like, people would start, you go to a random concert and people would start chanting, "Let's go Whalers." So, you know, but we always had to fight whether you were a Boston fan or a New York fan. So, see, this is what open forum's about. Whatever you want to talk about.
I have something off the wall.
Absolutely.
Okay, so in the Executive Issues Committee, I'm sorry, I'm always gonna have the old name.
Yep.
Towards the end of the meeting, a dialogue box up came on my computer and it said it was from Teams. It was, and it asked if I was going to share my entire contact list.
What?
So I reached out to DOE and they said they didn't do it, but it had the logo of our computer meetings.
Wow.
And I'm very creeped out by that.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention at the end of the meeting, but watch out.
Well, okay.
Somebody is
Hacking.
Perhaps internet security or team security discussion at the full board meeting in May might not be a bad idea.
So they don't have your access information or they wouldn't have provided that request.
Right.
So you're secure, but I never answer stuff like that. I just never do.
Was it an email you got or was it a notification?
It was during the meeting. It was during the meeting and it came up as a dialogue box in the middle of my iPad screen.
So, but you were in the browser, not in the app, right?
I signed up for the meeting with the link on my
I
iPad.
was in the app.
But
I got it.
Oh, you did, okay.
do you come in through a little link down here, or does it come up through your?
I go to
browser?
the agenda and click the
Right.
link on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
But it was on the app as well, Rob said.
Oh,
It's
you,
probably justice.
Maybe
I mean,
something.
we use the word nuclear so much
Yeah.
and radiation
Right.
and I'm sure their screeners and their AIs.
They didn't get all of us though.
right.
If I'm the only one, that's even creepier.
No.
Robin, you got it.
Oh, Rob, you got it too? Did it say Teams? Is that what the?
That was deep, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you checked your firewalls? I don't know.
And Teams is supposed to be extra secure, so it was probably something to do with your machine, but they can't get into it. They can get onto it, but not into it.
All I know is that I had something weird happen with my Teams. I don't remember what it was, but it was in the middle of something, so I don't know, but I don't know if it was that. It was just something like, well, this is odd. I mean,
It said Teams requested access to my contact list.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's crazy. And
Yeah.
yeah, the whole phishing, spear phishing type thing is definitely something to be aware of, and we should never click the link that Lindsay doesn't send us.
Well, has anybody searched for that scam online? Because I'll bet you 2 of you had it, probably 10 minutes.
Grab a screenshot if it happens again.
Yeah, control print screen or window print screen, excuse me.
Not on a Mac.
Oh, on a Mac.
No, it's on an iPad.
Yeah, there's plenty of ways to do it. It's like command,
Take a screenshot.
command 3, 4, or 5 on a Mac, do kinds of screenshots.
I'll talk with you later.
Yeah, so that's good to know, and thanks for bringing awareness to that.
Share. Oh, well, Rob, did it say access or share your contact list?
I don't quite remember. I
Okay.
just looked at his garbage and deleted it.
So
Anyway,
IT issues and potential scammers aside, we have an issue management team working in the COE committee. And it's looking at potential 101s that the board might want DOE to make available just to the general public. What are some sort of 30-minute presentations they could do on YouTube and expand awareness for folks who are coming into the board or folks who just want to learn a little bit about something. So something that you guys could help with on that IM team is shooting any ideas you have. Something you've always wanted to know about radionuclides or environmental cleanup or processing uranium into plutonium. All of those things would be fair game for us to ask for, but not necessarily for them.
So as we're moving into the operation of the waste treatment plant, and we have new people moving into this area, or people are suddenly looking at it, is it safe?
Right, well, that's that risk conversation too, yeah, so. Is it safe?
Of course it's safe.
Rob said so.
Rob? Yes.
A lot of money spent on it.
Rob says
It
it
better
was.
be.
So that's the whole YouTube training. Is it safe? Of course it is. All right.
30 seconds.
Good to go?
Anybody have anything else? Otherwise, we're an hour early, 45 minutes early.
That's good.
Adjourn to the bar?
So dinner options are a thing to discuss once we close the meeting, but yes, that's not after 5.
So if you're going to COE and Twist tomorrow, it's at the ecology office, and I will bring donuts. So I'm just gonna-
Oh, thank
That's
you.
so nice.
It's also
There will
good
be
guys cups.
a DF law briefing and assistant plan 10 briefing tomorrow, so.
Yep, and then a HEALAC presentation by my headquarters in the morning.
Yep.
If you haven't started, I'm just sorry for interrupting, but if you haven't started on the system plan, reading or something like that, that introduction is really good. Okay, I recommend that to most people. It basically explains a lot of stuff, more information about the TBI and And, the acronyms here, anyway, the cleanup of the low-level waste. Why can't I remember that?
AMPS.
What's that?
AMPS?
AMPS, the new one, yes. There's a little discussion in there about AMPS. So it's well-written, it's long. Honestly, I'm not gonna get through the whole thing for sure, but it's good.
All of those spreadsheets look the same after a while.
They do.
Anyone else have anything to open forum, anything on your mind before we adjourn?
How do you get more people to attend this meeting?
We've got a fair amount of people attending the meeting. I mean,
And again, look into the
the table's about full and we got 10 online, so it's not a bad meeting.
Not a bad turnout, no.
So tell your friends, bring more, but you know, keep showing up.
Yep.
So facilitation will be sending out the email for vice chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for coming and talking and filling the chairs. But engaging while you fill the chairs is important. And we will see you online in a month or so.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.
So Tom, I need your availability.